Which is located, as you know, in an undisclosed and highly clandestine site northwest of the great and fair city of Chicago, Illinois. We once again bring you our monthly edition of this great and legendary radio show, Meet the Chicago Historians. We're glad to have you here with us today. We're here in the month of September, in the final waning days of summer, this being the final week of the glorious season of summer, and we will have our monthly edition of Meet the Chicago Historians for you. And now, let me give you the gentleman of the air who started this whole tradition some years ago, John DeVita.
Hey.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey.
Thank you very much, John. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, September the 16th, the year 2019. Today, the panel will be talking about whatever comes across their mind. So sit back and enjoy Meet the Chicago Historians. And here's our announcer, Mr. John. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much, John. This is John Escachilco serving as announcer today. As our regular listeners know, Richard Lang is ordinarily our announcer. Rich can't be here today. Rich is very well known in radio broadcasting. He recreates classic radio shows of the air, and perhaps he's getting ready to do his Jack Benny impression right at this very moment as we speak for one of his upcoming presentations. We're approaching the fall, and I know he generally has bookings in the fall. So I'll be doing double duty today as your announcer and the moderator of the show, and mentioning the moderator, of course, our longtime and highly regarded moderator, John Jack Red Ryan, cannot be with us. Jack Ryan has been under the weather for some months now. But I had a chance to talk to his wife just a few days ago, and he's doing well, and I'm sure he sends his best wishes to everyone here on the panel, and will probably be listening to our show as well. So here we are, the month of September, 16th of September, the first day of the second half of the month of September. 30 days hath September, as we all learn. So let's start off by going around our table. We always tell people, don't try to locate us. We're in a very, very secret location, and you'd have to go through so many checkpoints, the barbed wire, the minefields, the guards. It's just a hassle. So don't try to locate us, folks. Just enjoy our broadcast. And now we're going to go around the table here at the John DeVita Broadcast Center, starting with the gentleman directly across from me. Would you please, as John Daly used to say, come in and sign in, please?
My name is Don Peter. I'm from Oak Park, Illinois, and I'm working with the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago, and I like what we're doing and have a good one.
Okay. And we go to one of our newer members of our panel. Would you please identify yourself?
Good morning. My name is Mark Nielsen, and yes, this is a undisclosed area, and I had to be blindfolded as I came into here, so I don't even know where I'm at.
That's standard.
Mark Nielsen is my name. I'm a retired deputy fire commissioner from the Chicago Fire Department. I was in charge of operations when I left the fire department just short of 2 years, and I now own a business called Nielsen Defense, and we teach, specialize in concealed carry training. Thanks.
Very good. Thanks for being with us today.
Okay, John, I'm Dennis Fitzgerald, retired Chicago policeman, 33 years, and I'm proud to say that I head up the police council, the one and only police council of the Knights of Columbus, and with members from 50-plus suburbs and 7 different states. And glad to be here today, and I should say, I did give Jack Ryan a call. It was good couldn't get in touch with him, but it was good to hear his voice on the machine, and I conveyed our best wishes to him. So let's go to the next.
Now we'll go to one of the regular members of our panel.
Yeah. He's a
sure.
Long-serving.
You're not going to say the oldest.
No, I didn't, but you're the longest-serving member of our panel.
Yes, I come from Cop Talk, too. But anyway, Bill Kugelman, I served 46 years in the Chicago Fire Department. I'm now retired for the past 19 years, I guess it is now, and with the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago. And I will mention that right now, we are at 5218 Southwestern in a firehouse, an abandoned firehouse that was not given to us, but
Least to us.
Alderman Ed Burke saw to it that we moved in there and made the first real home of the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago. We have an open house coming up on the 28th of September from 10 to 2 o'clock, and that happens the fourth Saturday of every month, except December. And I just want to say thank you, Ed Burke. Ed has taken some awful bumps here lately, and it's a shame that they can't put the good things that he's done for the city of Chicago and for the membership of police and fire and so forth. I will now turn it over to a new guest from the from the Northwest Chicago Historical Society. Please, go ahead, Dee.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Susanna Ernst, and I'm with the Northwest Chicago Historical Society. We have a lot of interest in all things historic on the Northwest side, and in the recent past, we've been talking a lot in the Jefferson Park neighborhood about what the fate of engine number 108's original building was, which is currently located at Ainsley and Lips. And so one of the reasons that we came by today was perhaps to talk a little bit about what's next to that building and any of the history of that building.
Very good. And
And I'm Frank Seworth, Northwest Chicago Historical Society. We just like history, fire history, fire department history, or neighborhood history. I think we need to preserve more of it.
thank you very much. And I am John Escacholco, and I'm both your moderator and announcer today. I served on the Town Board of Trustees in Cicero for many years. I was town assessor, served in the Illinois General Assembly as state representative, history major at DePaul and Loyola Universities. And since everyone else has a fire or police connection, I was chairman of the Fire and Police Committee of the Town Board of Trustees for many, many years in Cicero. And I was also the chairman or the commissioner of the Police Auxiliary position I was very proud of. So I'm very proud to have a connection to police and fire operations as well. That was always my primary interest when I served in town government. So we have a great panel today, a number of guests. We welcome our friends from the Northwest Chicago Historical Society and our friend from the Chicago Fire Department. And we will be here now for some time, and this is our September edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. It's customary at the beginning of our show that we do a segment or sometimes two about news of the day, news of the week, news of the month, and we sort of open the panel up for any points of interest that they would like to talk about. We had an attack in the last couple of days in Saudi Arabia, which has apparently destroyed 50% of their oil production facilities. But apparently that only represents 5% of current global oil production today. So Saudi Arabia is not quite as big a factor as it once was. So I'll just toss that out. Any other topic than anyone else? Is there anything in the news that anyone here would like to bring to the floor as we open our program up?
John, have you any idea about how much oil the United States pumps out of the ground for our use?
Well, that's the big story, and that is that the United States is once again, as it was for decades, the largest oil producer on Earth. Mm-hmm. And we are now not only meeting all of our needs for oil, we are exporting oil, which 20, 30 years ago, there were those who said it was impossible, it would never happen again.
Right.
You know, from the time that oil was first produced here in the United States in 1859 at a place called Titusville, Pennsylvania, which we all learned in school. I remember seeing the picture of that wooden shack with the tower where the first oil well was drilled in 1859. From then until probably the late 60s, the United States was the largest producer of oil in the world. And one of the many reasons that we were victorious in World War II is we had the huge production abilities of petroleum. But we lost that crown in the 70s as our production peaked and then declined, and we were overtaken by Saudi Arabia and by the Soviet Union, perhaps by Iran, we dropped to third or fourth in world production of oil. But now we're back on top with fracking. And I can remember in the 60s reading about something called shale, oil shale, and about the huge reserves the United States had of oil shale. Well, we're now producing oil from shale, from fracking. So we're not dependent on the Middle East for oil anymore. But many of our friends and allies are. In Europe, Japan, they still are dependent on Middle Eastern oil. We are not. So this is not going to directly affect us, but that's where we stand right now. And if those facilities are closed for any length of time, the price of oil is going to go up. And probably it will go up here in the United States as well.
You know, John, I just recently heard something, I'd say about a week ago. I hope I can recall it accurately. But fracking, we kind of like stumbled across it. And as this commentary went on, it referenced that it was like an overuse of water or a little excess pressure, and then they got more results, more positive results, and that's what led to fracking. Now, I'll invite your attention to say, you know, I mean, we are who we are. We're a fledgling, you know, a young country, 200 and some odd years old, whatever. But was that, what, you know, let it be the question, was that divine intervention, that we were the ones? In addition to this here commentary about a week ago or so, it went on to reference, I think it was the light bulb, that Edison, it was just a mishap. It gave something, one of his tests or whatever, a little too much radiation. And there then came the light bulb. Well, I don't know. You know, maybe it's happened in other fields with other discoveries or whatever. But look at how they benefited us in our advancement. And now we are, as you started off, they're going to be the world leader and exporter and things like that. You know.
God was good to this country.
Yes,
this
he
country
was.
has been blessed. I mean,
Quite well made.
I remember learning in school, and I always was interested, the resources the United States possesses are just enormous. And I mean, that's been a key to our success through the years. The iron, the coal, the rich agricultural lands, the wheat and corn, the
We
cattle.
feed the world.
We,
Right.
you know, God was good to us. The rivers, this country's blessed with navigable rivers. The Great Lakes, the greatest collection of fresh water on earth, and it's right here in the United States, and we share some of it with Canada. Geographically, we're all alone in a sense here in the Western Hemisphere. We've never had any great powers on the same continent to threaten us. We don't have to worry about enemy armies showing up on our borders. So God was very, very good to the United States of America in terms
Thank
of
you.
all
Yes,
of these things.
sure.
I hope he remembers us when we are fighting against these Muslims.
Right.
I know that's the big thing now too, and it just doesn't seem to be a good thing to have them around. They have invaded, I don't know if that's the right word I should use, France, Germany, and some of these other countries. I hope we stick with it
Right.
and keep them out of here.
And getting back to oil, one of the byproducts of it is natural gas. From what I understand, before you hit oil or fracking hits oil, there's a layer of natural gas above it. And we have, I guess, more we can use, but even there's I just doesn't want to be a thing for it, but Pennzoil is actually making motor oil now out of natural gas, which is, I've never heard of that
And
one
we have
before.
we've got enormous reserves of natural gas. We have the largest reserves of coal in the world. We're
Right.
they used to say we're the Saudi Arabia of coal. Well, now we're the United States of coal because we have greater reserves of coal than
Right.
any other country.
That's right.
So we're very fortunate in terms of resources, just a combination of things that contributed to making this the great nation that it became and is and will remain.
We're
Yeah.
also very, very lucky and God-given that we're here in the Midwest and not on the East Coast or the West Coast, where fires and floods and all of this stuff is going on. That's people should be very, very happy and lucky and that they live here in the Midwest.
Florida apparently just dodged another bullet again. This last storm that they thought might hit the coast of
Umberto?
Florida has headed out to sea. So
Yeah.
Right.
Florida was very the destruction in the Bahamas is just. I saw a little bit of that today. It's horrendous what happened to those islands in the Bahamas.
Nothing left.
Yeah.
Nothing absolutely left there.
Even the airfields destroyed where they couldn't even fly relief supplies in. There was no place to bring
Yeah.
supplies in. So that's what are there any other news stories that anyone would like to bring? Anything closer to home? Anything going on that you'd like to address?
I've got something here that could be of interest to some people, John. On January 5th of 1990, an Illinois state trooper, April Stabersky, was murdered in the line of duty. She lost her life. She was what we call a line of duty death. And the state of Illinois is going to memorialize the roadway dedication. And please forgive me if I can't pronounce this right. Pingree Grove, Illinois.
I've got a friend that lives in Pingree Grove.
I don't know. It's out. They tell me
Northwest?
just north of Elgin.
Yeah.
And they are going to dedicate that to her on the 25th, which is this next Wednesday, with a procession and do this. She only had 4 years on the job, and she was a friend of my son. They worked together for a while.
They're having the dedication. Did you say January the 5th?
No, that's when she was murdered.
Oh, that was when the. Okay, I'm sorry.
That was
I'm
her
sorry.
death. This is September 25th.
Oh, okay.
9 o'clock, with a procession to follow at the Pingree Grove Municipal Center. I don't know if any of you have, but anyway, it's right near Elgin, and they're going to dedicate that, and also they're dedicating the training room in District 2 to her. The whole building is dedicated to my son, but this was the training room will be rededicated to her. She was quite a gal, so if anybody has got nothing to do, why go on out there. Great gal. Other than that, we have the open house on the 28th at 5218 Southwestern. That's a museum, Fire Museum of Greater Chicago. We'll be open from 10 to 2, and we just about fill the place up every open house. It's been very well, brought to the people's mind that, oh, hey, this is the city of Chicago. We used to celebrate burning it down every year. Nobody knew that we had a museum, but we do now, and it's going along very well. One of our companions that we had here on the Chicago Historians, our friend Ken Little, who passed away, a little over a year ago now. That was one of his babies. He was the, I would say, the leader of the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago, and we've dedicated the second floor, which is all a library and this type of thing. All of our storage of journals and paper orders and different things is up on that second floor, which is the history of the Chicago Fire Department. And we're getting known for all over the country now. We're getting calls from, California, Arkansas. We had a couple of guys in here from Minnesota here last week. The guy's grandfather was on the job, was a captain on the fire department, and they were in a volunteer and then a paid fire department up in Bloomington, Minnesota, which is right outside of Minneapolis, and they were really impressed. It's good to see somebody like that, and that really don't know Chicago, and if they're impressed like that, that's all we want. You know, that makes us feel good. So that, like I say, the open house is on the 28th, and then Rose Hill Cemetery on the 29th. The next day, Sunday,
The annual muster.
is the annual memorial
Ceremony.
service.
Yeah.
And Rose Hill Cemetery, 5800 Northwestern or Ravenswood. Get in on either side. Rose Hill Cemetery is the site of an old from 1871 monument that was put together. It's probably one of the best in the country, one of
Right.
the least known. But now that it is known, why we're getting a lot of info from other places.
What time is that ceremony?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Wasn't the monument originally for the volunteers?
Yes, it was volunteer
then
to
it kind-
1871.
Right.
And if you walk around the monument and then look at it and see the headstones around it are all not all, but quite a few are firemen families that are buried there,
Right.
and they just wanted to be near that monument. I started that thing, put up a stone, a monumental stone, and we've got a few guys buried now since I
Right.
did that, one of them being my dad, and
Right.
I will be right next to him. So if you get a chance, 10 o'clock.
It's a very impressive ceremony. I've
Oh.
had the privilege of attending it a number of times, and you know the public address system is provided by a very well-known local broadcaster.
Who might that
and,
be?
And volunteer who he's a man that volunteers his time for service to the fire department. I can't place his name.
Who is it?
Can
Who
any
is it?
did any of you perhaps can you fill in the gap here of who that gentleman just might be?
John
That
something.
celebrated yes, it is John. The first name is John. It couldn't be our namesake John DeVita, could it?
There you go.
It is. It's John DeVita, ladies and John, would you care to say a little bit about the annual and very impressive military-style ceremony with the color guard and the fife and drums and flags, and it's a very, very impressive ceremony.
It's a very nice ceremony. You're right, John. For the past 18 years, I go to the cemetery the Wednesday before the ceremonies and wire up the trees, let's say, and then Sunday morning, I get to the cemetery about 4 o'clock in the morning to put out the speakers, the podium, microphones, and get everything all set up. And like I said, I've been doing that for the past 18 years or so. And I'll tell you one thing, being at Roseville Cemetery at 4 o'clock in the morning, boy, it is quiet. Boy, I have nobody in my way.
That's right.
If you've never been to Rose Hill Ceremony, it's worth a visit just in itself. It's a very old cemetery, right in the city of Chicago. You can see the age of it by the age of many of the monuments and markers. Very beautiful. And at that time of year, it's just at the end of summer, the beginning of fall. If the weather is nice, it's just a beautiful place to be on a Sunday morning.
That's right. I just want to say this, John. If anybody who is interested in going to the ceremonies, and that's going to be the Sunday after this, is Sunday, September the 29th, the best way to get into where the ceremonies is, if you go down Foster Avenue East, you come up to Damon Avenue, and then you go under the railroad tracks. The very first street after you go under the tracks is Ravenswood. You make a left-hand turn and go to the main gate, turn left into the gate, and the monument is right there, just about 200-300 feet inside the main gate of the cemetery. Or you can come down Peterson Avenue, and you take Peterson Avenue to Ravenswood. You make a right-hand turn and go to the main gate, turn right, and then you go inside, and then there's where the big monument is.
Right.
And also the 511 Club, which was one of my ideas, will be there with the canteen service, and they'll be serving coffee and rolls and the refreshments. It's a great ceremonies. Then afterwards, after the ceremonies is over with, Local 2 Union, who sponsors this entire ceremonies, has an open luncheon at the firehouse, Engine Company 70 on Clark Street. So everybody, once you leave the cemetery, you can go over to the fire station and enjoy a nice nice luncheon over there. It's a great day, and like I said, I've been doing this for the past 18 years or so.
Not to detract from this cemetery, but or this thing, in the cemetery, if you like cemeteries, there's a lot of historical figures you would recognize buried there, like the Pinkertons and
A lot of mayors.
a lot
They
of
have a
mayors.
Begging-
A lot of big people. It was
Right,
quite a place in
right.
its day, and I tell you what, if you go there, you will hear one of the I think one of the greatest singers in the state of Illinois, and she is she's one of the gals, real Irish voice on her, and she's just operatic style, Kathy O'Connell, and she will do all of the singing, the Star Spangled Banner and the Amazing Grace and this, and she's just great. She's been with us all the time, and she's also a great friend of a friend of mine called Kate, and Kathy loves Kate. But it's quite a ceremony. This statue is probably the best statue in the country, fire-wise. There are other services. There are other monuments to the fire department, but this one has got to be, the best. It was built by, and his name escapes me, a very, very well-known architect, sculpturer, who also designed the entrance to Rose Hill Cemetery that you go through if you come off of Ravenswood. That's all his. He's a very well-known artist in that fact.
Bill, where is that house that's going to serve refreshments? Was
It's
that Engine Company 7 on Clark?
70.
70.
70,
And
yeah.
whereabouts on Clark?
6030 on Clark Street.
It's just a short hop from
Yeah.
the cemetery.
Oh, yeah, close
It's
by.
very
Yeah, it's a brand new house.
Yeah.
Engine 59 and 70 are both
They
in
serve a
there
great
now.
buffet too. They have a fine
Lots
buffet.
of parking too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
parking is good. And
As
I
you-
would say if you're going to go to the service, get there early because parking is, you got to walk a ways.
Yeah.
As you drive out of the cemetery, you go north on Ravenswood. You come up to a stoplight, which is Peterson Avenue, and make a right-hand turn and go up maybe to the second light. And then there's the parking lot, the entrance to the parking lot to the firehouse is right there. Don't cross over Clark Street, because then you'll miss it. And it's right across the street, just happened to think about it, right across the street from a car wash. So the car wash should be on the right, the parking lot for the firehouse is on the left.
The only reason anyone would want to be on Clark Street would be if it was St. Valentine's Day. That's
21,
the only
22 North
time when
Clark.
it's
There's that historian
anything
blood
exciting
surfacing.
happening on Clark Street.
And like Bill says, if you want to see how high your goose pimples can get on your arms, just listen to Kathy, because I tell you, she does a fantastic job. And then they play the taps, and then it's just a wonderful, wonderful ceremony.
It
It's a
is.
great tribute to our fallen firefighters.
And usually they have a tremendous number of brass from the fire department, led by the commissioner and deputies, and all the brass are there assembled, and it's just a very impressive ceremony.
I must add, no doubt, when the pipers crank it up with Amazing Grace, you're going to have the goosebumps, and you might have some watery eyes there.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and let me throw in my comments also that we were honored in the Pipes and Drums of the Emerald Society, the Chicago Police Department. We were honored to be in Backdraft, the Fire Department movie. We've done about a half a dozen movies, but when we were doing Backdraft in Rose Hill Cemetery, we had to do a couple takes. What was it? Bob Howard was the director. Is it
Ron Howard.
Bobby Howard?
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard.
Opie.
Yeah,
Opie.
Opie. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our guys would be whistling that tune, and he'd be looking up from his. Who's whistling it? Well, of course, policemen, pipers. But we had to do several takes. So a lot of times they're delegating us to the bus. Wait a little while. I was getting hungry, and I finally got fed up, and I'm going to look for the food. 'Cause the actors eat good.
Oh, yes.
They truly. It's the best of the best. So we're walking the roads in the cemetery there, me and a friend of mine is a state trooper, and lo and behold, here comes a guy around a curve, and we walk by a white trailer with the doors on it with gold stars. I didn't pay much attention to it. There were no names on there and anything. Here comes a guy around the corner, and I was very hungry, and he's got a plate mounting with food, and I guess he could just read my thoughts. I was staring at that plate, and so finally he said, "Well, the food truck is right around the turn." And I says, "Okay, thanks, bud." And my partner says to me, he says, "That was Robert De Niro. You just said thanks, bud." My wife gets a kick out of that story. But John, to your point, Rose Hill Cemetery is a beautiful cemetery. Yes.
And we'll pick that point up, but it's time now for an intermission, and you're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians, September edition.
I can tell you some stories.
Well, friends, like John had mentioned before, today is Monday, September the 16th, and half the month of September is in the books, which means it won't be that far away when we're going to see white stuff coming down from the sky in front of our windows, and they are predicting another severe, cold, snowy winter this year. And also, the Farmer's Almanac is predicting a very, very wet spring like we had in the year 2019. So it's time for you to check the roof, gutters, and siding on your house. You want to make sure that everything is in proper order, your roof, your siding, and your gutters, for the severe weather that's coming up within the next few months. Like I said, this is September, and it's not too late to have your roof, gutters, and siding checked, because you don't want mildew or mold in your attic. You don't want drip, drip, drip on the ceilings in your rooms, and you don't want your walls damaged with a leaky gutter or bad siding. So give Mike Besch, Besch Brothers Roofing, Siding, and Gutters a call, and Mike Besch will come out in his shiny, nice red truck with ladders on top, and he'll check your roof, siding, and gutters and give you an estimate, and you go from there. So, Besch Brothers Roofing, Siding, and Gutters, give them a call at area code 630-616-1359. Mike will come out. He'll go up and check your roof, your gutters, your siding, and tell you what you need, and go from there. Like I said, we're supposed to have a rough winter again this year, and we're supposed to have a very wet spring in the year 2020. So call Besch Brothers Roofing, Siding, and Gutters at area code 630-616-1359. And Mike Besch will drive out, take a look, give you an estimate, and go for there. So call for a free estimate. Call Mike Besch at Besch Brothers Roofing, Siding, and Gutters at area code 630-616-1359. Call today for a free estimate.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you with us. This is John Kacholko here for Meet the Chicago Historians. We've been talking a lot about the fire department. We have a number of veterans of the fire department on our panel, or people affiliated with the Chicago Fire Department. We've been talking about the upcoming very impressive ceremony that will be held on the last Sunday in September at Rose Hill Cemetery. Did you want to add anything further? We kind
No,
of broke
John.
into you. We were talking about the cemetery as
Yeah, it's just, you're right, it is a historical place. That monument is breathtaking. You really want to take pictures of these things. And as it was said earlier, the cemeteries are so rich in history and all that, with all the people that are there. It's really quite a place.
I would guess that Rose Hill, I'm sure goes back to the 19th century, and there was a big movement in the United States in the 19th century to make cemeteries virtually parks. Our idea of a cemetery as a beautiful place with trees and landscaping, that really originated in the 19th century. I mean, prior to that, cemeteries were usually in churchyards. They were just rows of markers, and there was nothing special about cemeteries. It really came about here in America that they had the idea of making these places beautiful places that people would want to go to and spend some time remembering their families. And I'm sure Rose Hill dates back to that beginnings in the 19th century. Well, we're talking about the fire department, and we have two folks here with us today from the Northwest Chicago Historical Society, Susanna and Frank, and they have a special cause or a special issue regarding a historic firehouse. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, thank you. So the firehouse that we're talking about is the one that is located in Jefferson Park at the corner of Lips and Ainsley. It is at 4835 North Lips, and the firehouse that's sitting there today used to house engine number 108, but it has not since 1981. Now, interesting about that particular plot of land is that it was actually acquired by the town of Jefferson in 1874, and at that time they erected a wooden firehouse on that space, and it served the town of Jefferson. Well, when the whole of Jefferson Township was annexed in 1889, along with several other townships, that became part of Chicago. And of course, there's already a firehouse there, and there was a volunteer fire force there, and they continued to then operate as part of the City of Chicago Fire Department with the wooden house, and it was still an all-volunteer fire department for a while until they had city employees that came there. At a certain point in time, once they had annexed all of these townships, and they're all different fire stations throughout these townships, they had to kind of build new buildings because they weren't up to fire code. And so one of the ones that was rebuilt was engine number 108, and that was in 1906. It was constructed, and it was a 2-bay firehouse, and it's one of only three 2-bay firehouses that's still in operation today in the city of Chicago. There's only 2 that are in operation today in the city of Chicago. That's still standing. They left in 1981. The Streets and Sand came and took over for them until 2011, and it's been sitting vacant ever since. So the inside of it, as you might imagine, is deteriorating, as is the outside of it, because really there's no caretaker there. About 2 years ago, a developer had approached to potentially buy the property, which they are in the process of doing. And I think, do they own the property, do you know yet? Or they have not quite yet acquired it, but they had a plan for taking the firehouse and basically putting several stories on top of it. And it looked very box-like, and it seemed like that the plans were probably done in a very, probably in a very abbreviated period of time, and so maybe they didn't have time to think through everything. But we worked with them and with our local alderman at the time to go through kind of a process where we try to figure out what would be the best way to actually preserve that building and make it look like a firehouse. So the latest iteration of those plans show the firehouse looks basically the same as it did at one time, and they've restored the cornice and a third story that's set back. So there would be 9 apartment units on top of the building and a business on the ground floor, which is currently slated for Lake Effect Brewing. Right now, as far as we know, in the city of Chicago, the wheels move slowly, that it's still in process. But we continue to try to educate people because we think that the latest plans are the best chance we have for actually making sure that the building doesn't deteriorate further, and to ensure that people know about it, so when they hear about it, they also will understand what it is and to continue to advocate it. And when this, there's a lot of people that don't really understand the importance of historic preservation, and There are people that need to understand why this is important to Jefferson Park, why the fire department in general is important to the city of Chicago, and particularly all of these places that, are from the turn of the century. It's really, really important. It's part of our urban fabric, and it's part of the fabric of Jefferson Park. And so we're continuing to educate people on what's happening. We're in touch with the developer, but as you can imagine, the wheels of the city move slowly. I mean, this has been a couple of years now already in progress, but hopefully within the next, within the next 5 years or so, we can look at the structure there, and it's going to look like what it once did back in the early part of the 20th century.
But you say they're going to put several floors above the existing
just
building?
One.
Oh, just one. Just one.
So what they'll do is it's 2-story firehouse. So the first 2 stories will look as they did in the past. They're actually going to do some restoration work too. They're going to replace the cornice and put some stained glass in to make it look like it once did. The third story is going to be set back. So when you're looking at it from street level, you really can't see so much the third story. And the developer is doing that just because he's trying to figure out a way to make the endeavor profitable. So
Sure.
having the 9 apartments.
So
9 apartments.
we never had stained glass. We had a lot of stains, but not stained glass.
Not stained glass.
I know.
And
I spent 10 years in that place.
Did you? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? We couldn't tell from some of the pictures that we had, and the developer had actually been looking at that. I would hate to deter him from doing that now that he's
Tell
kind of
him I'd be
committed to
glad
it.
to help you. I'd be glad to help. I don't know if I've got any pictures. The house just to the south, right on the south side of the firehouse, was owned by a fireman
Is that right?
who was assigned there. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we have some pictures of that house
Yeah.
too.
All right.
And he got lost going to work every day.
I sure did.
That firehouse, the old Inja 181 Lips Avenue over there, that building housed a lot of fire equipment. Not only did it house 108, but Truck 23, Battalion 22, Otto Fent.
Correct.
God bless his soul. I used to love being with him. And they had a squad in there and an ambulance in there. So that building had a lot of fire equipment. When you see 108 come out the door, there was a parade of equipment that is going to follow right behind them.
And it's interesting you should mention that. We talked about that earlier this morning, that was the only firehouse in the entire city that had all of those different functions in one building at one time.
Because the next firehouse would be up on Avondale, which was 119. That's on Avondale and just west of Nagel. There's the fire. That was the next closest firehouse. So they had to have a lot of equipment at 108. So like that, wherever there would be a fire, they would be able to cover the area.
And we also, with the squad, we covered O'Hare Field
Yeah,
when it started out
I
there.
did hear that as
Yeah.
well. That's
yeah,
really
that
incredible.
was Squad 7, wasn't it, Bill?
Squad 11.
Oh, Squad 11, yeah. Okay,
Later
yeah.
Flying
Right.
Squad 7.
Yeah,
Right,
Flying
yeah,
Squad
right.
7.
Just
later.
something kind of odd. Now, Squad 7 from the airport covers part of the north side of Chicago.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Bill, when you said you didn't have stained glass windows, but you had a lot of stains, it brought back a memory to me. Of course, I'm going back, 30, maybe 40 years ago. The Chicago Police Department, and a lot of people don't commonly know or realize this stuff. So when we get a job of a rabid dog, and if it was pretty conclusive that the dog was rabid, so, he would be...
Euthanized.
he would be killed or whatever. But here's what I'm saying. The board of... I'm rusty, okay? I've been away from it a long time, 30, 40 years ago. But it was the Board of Health or whatever, so it was in one of the sub-basements of the Civic Center. They would want to make a determination on this dog, was it rabid or not. But, a little Chihuahua is put it in your pocket, but a St. Bernard is a couple 100 pounds. The Board of Health, their coolers, their refrigerators, you just bring down the head. Okay? So when you say a lot of stains, I remember going to the house, in the back of the house with the axe, that sever the animal. And maybe that's not commonly known by the public at large, what the professions deal with, police and fire. But
And on that cheerful note, folks,
Yeah.
I'm sure we
Tell you
we
what,
brightened everybody's afternoon with that
Tell you what,
heartwarming story
Rich,
of days gone by.
Do you know Sam Cazzo?
No, I don't recall.
He was a sergeant on the police department.
Yeah.
And Sam came in to see me one day at the firehouse that I was at, and my son used to have it wasn't a business, it was just a hobby of rescuing and nurturing baby raccoons.
Oh.
People would call him, "Oh, we got a raccoon in the attic," and that Johnny would go out there and he'd get them, and then we'd feed them and that. So one day I brought one of the babies with me to the firehouse, and the guys got a big kick out of it. And here comes Sam, the squad pulls up, and he saw that, and oh boy, he said, "That's really neat." Years went by, and I'm chief of the 10th Battalion now at Kedzie and Montrose, and we're sitting down to lunch, and the speaker cracks and says, "Is the buggy, is Battalion 10 in the house?" "Yeah, they are," guy said. "Is Chief Kugelman working?" And he said, "Yes, he is." Now this is something that you never hear about. You never get it over there.
Sure.
He says, "Well, let me talk to him." So I go up, and it was Danny O'Donnell from the fire alarm office, and he said, "Listen, we want you to get on the air. In other words, leave, get it in a buggy and go to such and such an address, and meet the police." Well, usually that's the police want ladders to get to the roof for a burglar or whatever, So I go over to this address, and it had to be 6 or 7 squads around there, and one of the guys come out, and one of the dicks came out, and he said, "Oh, we're glad to see you, Chief. We got a problem here." I said, "Well, what is it?" He says, "Well, our sergeant is trapped in the basement, outside the basement underneath some stairs, by a raccoon. Raccoon has got him trapped down there." And I said, "Oh, who is that?" He says, "Sergeant Cazzo." He was pretty well known. And I said, "Okay." So I went to take a look at it, and sure enough, here's Sam. He's in this little place, and the coon is there, hissing and cussing at him and that. And I said, "How come you called me?" He says, "Well, the sergeant said, get a hold of a guy by the name of Kugelman. He's Mr. Raccoon. He says he knows all about these raccoons, So okay, that's
And it
why
wasn't Ralph Cramden and Ed Norton.
No, no.
They were into raccoons.
So I'm there,
It was a lodge.
and I go out, and it was all cement block around there, and I said, "Listen, there's no way you're going to get in there and just, have that thing jump in your arms and carry him out." I said, "You're going to have to kill that." And he says, "Well, he's already bitten the sergeant. He already bit him."
No.
And I said, "Well, then let's do it the right way. Does anybody have a 22 or a 32, something small?" So I don't know what they came up with. It was probably a 38. I says, "Go on in there, and make sure you hit the raccoon, and that Sam isn't in the way, because that's going to go right through the raccoon." Wow. So all of a sudden I heard bang bang, 2 shots. Okay, we got it. Well, here comes Sam, and he's got the bite marks and the scratches from the raccoon. He thought he could just pick it up, And I said, "Okay, Sam, come on, you're going to the hospital." Oh, I'm all right. I said, no, you're going to the hospital. And I told the other guy, says, "And you take that coon to wherever it is, animal services or whatever it is. And if you can't get in there, take it to a hospital and tell them what happened. Just make sure that you don't mess around with the head. They gotta do that." So From there on,
Yeah.
and Sam has always been a friend.
Ah.
Father Dan Brandt has talked to him, and I told the people at Mass about this, and Sam is quite a character, but he was fine. He had to go through all the shots,
Oh, sure.
like
did too.
oh God, like 8 shots or something like
12.
that. Yeah, and so he went through
Excuse me.
all of that, and the coon turned out that it wasn't rabid. So it's one of the things that we do with the fire department and police department. Other than that, I had talked to Alderman Burke about something that I wanted done when I was president of the union, and that was to have everyone tested in the fire, and I added the police for hepatitis,
Oh, okay.
because you can get that just by going up, and the coppers are usually ones they're first in,
Yeah, yeah.
and they wanted that too. Whether it ever happened, I had left. Whether it ever happened, I don't think so.
No,
Mark,
we ended
either.
up, we did get inoculated for hepatitis
Yeah.
B, but I think that's in reference to hepatitis C. That was the bigger,
Exactly.
easier spread.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know what I think they can go in and do it, but it's not
Sure.
mandatory.
Right.
That.
Right.
And there was going to be a price on it, and Ed
Right.
knew how to get that done by the. I said, we got this is Chicago. We got a medical
Sure.
society or what a unit. Should be no problem doing that.
Right. Ironically, one of Bill's firehouses that he was command of was nicknamed the Raccoon Lodge. Right?
Yeah, yeah. That was quite a thing going down there. there's Sam. I said, just make sure that you don't shoot where it's gonna go off the wall and hit Sam.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, one of the many things that we do other than putting out fires.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I was going to say before, Bill, when you're talking about the Fire Museum and Ken Little, that as I look to the wall, I see the picture of Ken Little
Yeah.
there, and his smile and his eyes looking down on us.
God bless
And
him.
he truly has to be proud of, in today's addition to the board, Mike Nelson, the Deputy Fire Commissioner. Strong contribution to the board today.
Now, I assume, there's a first deputy fire commissioner, or
There is. We have
and
a
then there are several deputy fire commissioners.
Four specific. So we have a deputy fire commissioner in charge of each bureau.
Okay.
The bureau that I oversaw was operations, which is now headed by a gentleman by the name of Tim Sampe. So he's the current person in that position. By the way, my name is Mark, M-A-R-K, Nielsen, N-I-E-L-S-E-N. That's okay. But
What was your insignia? 3 horns?
it was 5.
5 horns?
Yeah, there's no differentiation between anyone who has the title commissioner.
So, they all have the
They all
5
have
horns.
5 because they
Oh.
don't make 6 and 7. That's why.
Okay.
What was your
okay.
radio signature? 2115?
215.
Oh, okay.
And
215.
John, they're not horns.
They're plungers.
They're bugles.
Speaking trumpets is
Yeah.
actually what they are, and we call them bugles.
I was
bugles.
in our department. A lot of the firemen called them horns, so I got accustomed to hearing it referred to. But I'm thinking
That's Cicero.
This was the deputy. He's right. Yeah, we've got a fine department. This was the deputy chiefs, and so you have a layer of command. You got many layers of command.
We do,
above
we
what
do.
we have.
Sure.
So all those who have the title of commissioner get 5 bugles.
On our
Yeah.
department. On our department, that's
Yeah.
how it is, right. A smaller department, you might, the person that's in charge of the fire department would
5,
typically
yeah.
have 5, and then
Yeah.
and at one time, we actually went with what the police utilized for a short time with
Stars.
stars. That didn't work out well, though.
Not
yeah.
for you guys? No.
I
No.
remember seeing that. on
Yeah,
television.
we
seeing
did have
them
it
with
for a
the-
short time. I think it was right after the strike, right? Bill?
Yeah,
in that era.
81 or
Yeah.
something. That's when we had the guy from California.
Blair.
Blair.
Didn't work
yeah,
out
he
well.
Came in
Did they use all the military and signal, eagles and oak leaves? And all
Well,
of
we
that?
started to use that for commander positions. Yes, we did. Yeah, and that still holds true. We have it for commander positions.
So you do use it for the lower ranks.
Right.
mid
Yeah, yeah,
right,
level
yeah.
management. Yeah.
Blair came from California. They called
He did.
Bushfire.
L.A.
Brushfire Billy was his nickname. Yeah, right. So he was unfamiliar with what we did in Chicago and how we worked. And one of the first fires that he attended, which was in the dead of winter, he questioned why the firefighters had boots on because he was not familiar with. I mean, they wore shoes in L.A. and he wondered why the firefighters had rubber boots on.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
And then another thing that he's famous for, we had a gentleman that tried to climb up the John Hancock
Right.
building,
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, Spider Dan,
Oh, yes.
and
yes.
Blair was the person that
Hosing him down?
made the attempt or made the order to hose the guys down. And I actually talked to the guys that were on that nozzle, and they heard the order, and they kind of just directed the stream elsewhere. But
Right.
to appease them, they did flow water, but not at them. It obviously would have killed them. So
That
not-
was quite that was quite a story when that
oh
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
He didn't last long. I
No.
can tell you that.
He, I went to the school, the what do they call it, Mark?
The Fire Academy?
No,
No.
the out east.
Oh,
the
the National Fire Academy.
National Fire
Yeah, right,
Academy.
Yeah.
And he was he left Chicago and he was on the board out there, and we had talked to different people from out there, and the whole thing was he ain't gonna last.
Yeah, he did
Which
not.
he didn't.
He did not.
Which he didn't.
Yeah.
Mark, is Chicago the role model agency or department?
Well, we like to think so. I mean, there's a lot of things that have originated in Chicago. For instance, the slide pole that we talked about earlier that was actually invented, and the first one that we had in the firehouse was made of wood.
Yep.
That didn't work out too well. But and by the way, slide poles are kind of pretty much gone with the modern firehouse. But things like that, and we do like to think so. I know our strategy, our SOP right now regarding high-rise operation is looked at by many, and many
Right, yep.
other departments mimic it and take bits and pieces from it. But
Wasn't the snorkel something that originated
was.
in Chicago?
It was,
I
yeah.
seem to remember hearing
Quinn's
that
snorkel.
originated.
yeah, that was Quinn's deal, and
Yeah.
I'm sure, well, Bill was there.
The first fire that it was really used at was Our Lady of the
Right,
Angels.
right.
Right.
And initially, it was a borrowed piece of equipment from
the
Streets and Sand, I
forestry, yeah.
believe,
Yeah.
with just
Forestry,
hose,
Probably
Yeah.
forestry.
Yeah.
hose strapped to it.
And it still exists now.
we still have them, and we just made a
No,
purchase.
I mean, that first one still exists.
Oh.
American La France
Oh,
has
okay,
it
gotcha.
in
Yeah.
somewhere, wherever American La France started from.
Yeah.
And they had a museum. Now, I heard something, and I don't know if it's true or not, that Boeing was supposed to take over their museum. But they still have that.
It's actually a hard piece of equipment to purchase, and we had to go to a
Parts.
manufacturer. Well, we had to go to a manufacturer that, after asking 10 different manufacturers to build one, we finally found one. So just before I left the position that I left, we purchased 4 of them.
You talk about Rosenbauer.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
company.
Well,
Yeah.
yours is all specialty equipment. I mean, even out at the airport, those orange fire trucks for
Yeah.
Yep.
foaming.
Oh, yeah.
foaming
Yeah.
units and
Right.
stuff.
That's a
Right.
federal
That's-
federal
oh,
requirement.
federal regulated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
They just
So
had
that-
a big doings there. I think it was yesterday or day before
At the airport.
at the airport.
Yeah.
Every 3 years they have to have that.
Oh.
It's a huge. I don't know,
drill?
Drill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they really.
It's
You know,
timed. Yeah.
It's right down to the real thing.
Sure.
Last Wednesday at the 9/11 ceremonies at the Irving Park Cemetery, which is just a couple blocks away from us here, the original Snorkel One was there at the ceremonies.
Wow.
Yes, that's
And,
owned by Chris Habermill.
Right.
And he's also got the other one, Squad One, and he sent me a picture of it on his way back. It broke down, and he
It
had,
did. Yeah, I did. I rode past it. It was right on Irving Park Road by the furthest west entrance there, Cargo Road or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I saw because I had to go to Bensonville, and I saw the unit.
Right, he had a flatbed truck, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where he is.
And who owns that now,
well,
Bill?
Chris Habermill.
From
You
the-
know
the
him from WBBM.
BBM. That's right.
Right.
Yes.
He's the traffic
Traffic
guy.
man. And yeah.
Quite a guy. He took an old patrol rig that we had at the museum, and he fixed that up. He also had Truck 9.
Wow.
Old Truck 9 fixed that up. In fact, that's the one that broke down. And I had Truck 57's old rig that I had bought when I was president of the union, and it was just sitting. He took that and he fixed the whole thing up good.
And on that note, we're coming up on another break. If you came in late, this has been our Be Kind to Animals segment of the Meet the Chicago Historian Show. So we'll be back with more interesting stories. Stay tuned.
Let's talk about plungers. What Andy, he made.
Hello, friends. Do you need new tires for your vehicle? How are the brakes? Are they in good condition? How's your front wheel alignment? Do you need your tires rotated? How are the shocks and struts? Do you need an oil and grease change? How about a tune-up? When was the last time you had your engine tuned up? How about the wiper blades? Are they nice, sharp blades to clean off the rain and snow? How are the headlights, tail lights, stop lights, turn directional signals? Are all the bulbs working? How's your cooling system and the exhaust system? How about your battery? Does that need to be upgraded? How about the belts and hoses, fuel injectors, timing belt and chain, and the air conditioning? Is that all working properly? Well, if you need any maintenance work done on your vehicle, go to Grand Tire and Auto Service, which is located at 7034 West Grand Avenue in Chicago. They are on Grand Avenue on the north side of the street, about 2 blocks east of Harlem Avenue. You can't miss the building. There's a big Goodyear sign right on top of the building. Or you can call area code 773-622-4361. Don, Chris, or Ken will be more than happy to assist you and to help you with any questions you might have about the maintenance on your vehicle. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 7 o'clock in the evening. Saturday, from 7:30 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And even on Sunday, from 9:30 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So once again, for any maintenance work you might need on your vehicle, go to Grand Tire and Auto Supply. Once again, their address is at 7034 West Grand Avenue in Chicago, about 2 blocks east of Harlem Avenue on the north side of the street. And their phone number is area code 773-622-4361. They have great service. Their mechanics are all certified mechanics, and they do quality work. Now, I've been going to Grand Tire with my vehicle since 1985, right up until this present day. So once again, Grand Tire and Auto Service at 7034 West Grand Avenue in Chicago. Their phone number is 773-622-4361. Don, Chris, and Ken will be more than happy to help you and to advise you on any maintenance work you might need on your vehicle. So once again, Grand Tire and Auto Service at 7034 Grand Avenue in Chicago, about 2 blocks east of Harlem Avenue on the north side of the street. You can't miss the building because there's a big Goodyear sign on the top of the building. That's Grand Tire and Auto Service, 7034 Grand Avenue in Chicago.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Meet the Chicago Historians, our great September end of summer, threshold of the beginning of autumn edition. I'm John S. Caciocco. Let's go around the table again, give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Don Peter from the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago.
I'm Mark Nielsen. I'm retired from the Chicago Fire Department.
Dennis Fitzgerald, Chicago Police Department, heading up the Knights of Columbus Police Council.
Bill Kugelman from the Fire Department of the Greater Chicago.
Susanna Ernst with the Northwest Chicago Historical Society.
Frank Seworth, Northwest Chicago Historical Society.
And John S. Caciocco, your moderator and announcer today. Well, we've talked a lot about the fire department, a little bit about the police. We had an important event just this past Wednesday, the commemoration of September the 11th. And that is a date that really provided Americans with an opportunity to recognize the importance of the services provided by police officers and firefighters. I think more than anything else, it brought home to people the degree to which we depend upon our police and fire services. When I was with the auxiliary police, I always said that America's defended overseas by the armed forces, but here at home we're defended by another armed force, the police force. And that's something that was not as much in evidence prior to September the 11th, but with the heroism of the NYPD, the New York Police Department, and the FDNY, the Fire Department of New York, people saw very graphically the sacrifice that these officers had made, those who died in the attack, and all of those who spent that day and subsequent days dealing with the effects of the attack on September the 11th. I'm very proud of the fact Cicero every year has a commemorative ceremony marking 9/11, which I serve as master of ceremonies. We always take the opportunity to honor our own police and fire department, and to have a representation from both departments at the ceremony and acknowledge them for their service. So that's something that I think 9/11. I often say that as horrendous as 9/11 was, there were good things that came from it, and one of it was the respect that we have for police officers and firefighters, and have had since that tragic day.
It was such an enormous mishap, misbeginning, when with the fire department, the FDNY, they lost 343 members.
Right.
I don't remember what the police was, but they were right up there
Right.
too. And I tell you what, John, one of the things that really came out of that was, and it was an article in the paper here on September 9th, the oversight of concealed carry is lacking. This was the Tribune's article, and we hear more and more of this concealed carry. And one of our members here today is a retired Chicago fire personnel person, but he also has a business now as what would you say? You teach concealed carry.
Yes. So
and here's Mark Nielsen, who is here with us to speak about this concealed carry here in Illinois.
So a couple of things I'd like to say about it. Illinois was the last state in the Union to get concealed carry rights for civilians. And unfortunately, less than 2% of our Illinois population has concealed carry license rights. So I think it's a great thing. I know there's a lot of dispute about gun control and that type of thing, and I'm actually an advocate of certain gun controls, and one of which that is a hot topic right now is background checks. I'm a big advocate of it. I think we should have it. We do actually have it in Illinois with the FOID card that we have to have, but other parts of the nation don't have it, and I think there should be some form of background check. I know there's folks that are dead set against that, and I know the NRA, and I am an NRA member, but we have to understand that we should negotiate, and I think in some cases the NRA is a little too stringent, and they don't bend in many situations. I often bring up the Las Vegas shooting where a bump stock was used, and I believe the NRA resisted making that illegal, and I don't think it serves any purpose in our society. So those two things said, the other thing, I wish people would exercise their right and get the concealed carry license. The process is a 16-hour class that you can take with me. I offer it in one of two different ways. You can either train in my home, which is in Edison Park, and we do the majority of the classroom in my basement. And then we have to go to a gun range to finish the qualification, but it's a total of 16 hours of training unless you were former military, and believe it or not, we have some former law enforcement that didn't have 10 years of service and don't qualify for the IROC. Is that the correct term, the IROC?
Yes.
The IROC certificate. So, an example, we had not too long ago, we had a young man that came on our fire department as a paramedic. He had about 7 years as a police officer, so he didn't qualify for the retired police officer carry right, so he had to get a regular civilian card. So we do have military and or police officers that take the class, and the number of hours are reduced to 8 hours for these folks. So the cost that I charge for the full 16-hour class, that includes 2 lunches, which Bill didn't get to sample, two lunches, and they're pretty good, I'm going to tell you. Homemade deep dish pizza is one of them, but the total cost is $150. That includes everything, including your range fee and gun rental, ammunition, everything. People ask all the time, do I need any previous experience? Do I need to be a gun owner? And what I tell them is I'd prefer not. I would prefer you to be a first-time shooter and don't have any bad habits. Part of the process is to teach people a gun selection if they are interested in purchasing one. We get a wide spectrum of students, folks like my wife, who has a concealed carry license but never carries. She never carries. Don't tell any of the bad guys that. But and then you have folks that do electric carry, and they do it all the time and do it as much as they can, which I advocate. Again, less than 2% of Illinoisans have concealed carry, and I wish we had more. And the reason I wish we had more people with concealed carry, I honestly believe that if the bad guy thought that you were armed, I don't think the bad guy would be a bad guy. And we see that time and time again with certain cities where crime rates are very low, like Plano, Texas, for instance, where just about every resident of Plano, Texas has some form of gun. There's essentially no crime. So I think it's a good thing. The class focuses on marksmanship skills, which some agencies don't focus on that too much, but I do focus on that and make you a pretty good marksman in the 16 hours that we teach. And probably the biggest thing that we focus on is why you don't want to use your gun. Plain and simple. You do not want to be involved in a shooting, and it's something I stress and say time and time again. You do not want to shoot somebody, period. And the article that Bill had just mentioned, it stated that I believe 60 people within the last 5 years have been involved. When I say 60 concealed carry licensees have been involved in shooting since it started 5 years ago, which is not a good thing. And if you look at some of the reports, if you will, they may have been disputes, arguments, that type of thing. That's something you need to walk away from, period. You have a gun or not, you walk away from that type of thing.
Let the police handle it.
The only thing that kind of bugs me, okay, I don't have concealed carry, and the reason probably why is this. If I have a good reason to shoot somebody, the first thing they're going to do is arrest me.
You're right. Yeah,
and it's sort of like you have to prove your innocence rather than they prove your guilt.
That might be the case.
So that's what, $100,000. So you have to put up $10,000.
And there are companies, and I know Bill has a challenge going from one of the companies that offer insurance policies, if you will, to provide an attorney and money up front to help you out in such a situation. But that is unfortunate.
And I would
think other states like that also? you don't
well, definitely the concealed carry insurance is nationwide. I know
Yeah.
that. So it is. They sell policies like hotcakes.
Right.
So I would
But, I mean,
assume.
is
I,
it-
I would think it's particularly a problem in Illinois because there is such a spirit of hostility in
Oh, sure.
Illinois politically to the. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, as you say, we were the last state kicking and
We were.
screaming where they agreed, and they
Right.
were compelled, I think, by court order
They were.
to grant concealed carry.
They
But
were.
there is so much animus against firearms that you'd be particularly
Right.
You're
in
absolutely
trouble
right.
here in
and
Illinois.
there's other municipalities and towns that, such as New York City, you don't want to be. You don't want to have a gun. Period.
Right.
And you don't want to be involved in a shooting
And
either.
The
so.
political stuff like that. Now they count so the AR-15. They consider it an assault weapon.
Yeah.
Well, from my thinking, there isn't a whole lot of difference between that and a semi-automatic hunting rifle.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
And the only difference
And
I can see is the shape of the gun.
Assault weapon
they-
is
it's not
assault
the
right. It's a
weapon, it's the
fictitious
person.
term.
It is the person, absolutely. I mean, the person is going to pull the trigger, but like you said, I mean, and typically the rifle that you just described, other than an AR, is typically chambered in something bigger and faster,
Right,
like a 308 round that is more deadly
right,
than the typical 5.56 round that you'll find in a AR-15.
Right.
So
Assault rifle is a made-up term. The military,
is.
the
It's a
military,
political
the
term.
military does not designate weapons assault rifles.
Not at
It's
all.
a term
No.
but it scares people. It sounds bad. It
Right.
sounds threatening. You could call a 45 caliber semi-auto. You could call that an assault pistol,
Sure,
I
sure,
presume.
sure.
But it's just a term that's used. politically.
I had to laugh when this candidate for president from Texas, he made the statement
We're gonna
in
take-
reference to ARs and AKs that these are made to kill. Well, you know what? I think every firearm that we have was kind of made to kill.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that
He was also calling it a military weapon. The military wouldn't even think of an
No,
AR-15.
no.
M16 or M60, yeah.
right. People think that AR stands for assault rifle, and it actually stands for
Armalite.
Armalite, which is the
The
company that started the whole
I
type of rifle.
I sat in on this on Mark's a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's another thing that I do,
Well,
Bill. Before you go any further, I do recertification. So after
Yeah.
5 years, a person has concealed carry. They have to take a recertification class, which is 3 hours, and Bill just took it.
And I was very, very impressed with the setup that Mark has got and the way he runs this class. It is very well done. Nobody wants to shoot and get into a shooting with anybody.
No.
Not even a bad guy, you know. If it comes to that, well, then it comes to it. But you don't want to kill anybody. It's
Well, what's worse, shooting somebody that's trying to shoot you, whether you shoot him or
Right.
he shoots you, you're better off shooting him than him shooting you.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
class, I often used an analogy, and I may be the laughing stock of the concealed carry world, but this is my plan. If I'm alone in my house, a bad guy comes in my house, I'm leaving my house.
That's
That's
right.
my intent. I might grab my gun to help me escape and make
So
sure
he don't find it.
so he doesn't find it, and so that I can escape and get out. But my intent is to call 911, and I tell people if I'm held up, my wallet is yours.
That's right.
If somebody wants my car,
Yeah.
it's insured.
The wallet goes this way and I go that way.
Now, there's different scenarios that you could interject in that, like put my grandson in the back seat of the car. That's a different deal. That's a different scenario where I perhaps would be the shooter in that case. But generally speaking, you want to avoid it at all costs
Yeah.
and
That's right.
not use the
Yeah.
gun.
Have you ever noticed that if these mass shooters, they go to schools, they go to theaters, they never go to police stations? Have you ever noticed they've
Yeah, I
never
did notice
decided
that,
to
yeah.
kill a lot of people in
Yeah,
a police
no, that-
station? I
absolutely.
wonder why
I
that
wonder why.
might be. There might be a reason.
Well, they
might
call
be.
that soft targets.
So you're
Nobody could
absolutely
fight,
right.
Nobody could fight back.
That's another thing I'd like to comment on too. I mean, we hear. I mean, obviously, there's 23 restricted facilities or occupancies in the state of Illinois, and that's fine. Such as courtrooms. We don't need guns in courtrooms. I get that, and police can't have guns in courtrooms.
Right.
Correct. But people that elect to managers of facilities to put a gun sign up, that's what they become, as a soft target. I think it's an invitation to a bad guy.
If there's no
that
guns there.
There's no guns here. You will not be challenged. Come in and rob us. And the only ones that abide to that sign and pay attention to it are us.
Right,
the
criminals
concealed
could care
carriers.
less.
Criminals do not have FOID
No.
cards. They don't have concealed carry cards.
Right.
They have guns, and they don't look at signage. So
That's right.
You know, some years ago, and it's been quite a while, the state of Illinois, anyway, in Cook County, well, it would be the state, had mental hospitals all over the place. You know, Dunning was one of the big ones, but there were like neighborhood mental
Right.
facilities, and whichever political fiasco happened, whether they cut the money down for them or whatever, we don't have those anymore.
right.
Put them in
And,
jail.
and we should have those things, because any of these mass shootings always seems to end up, the investigation says, well, he had a mental problem, or the mother says, yeah, I couldn't control him, and you know, so it's the mentality of somebody that does that.
You know, a few days ago, I was at the candlelight vigil, and it's several hundred people in attendance, and recognizable leaders throughout the law enforcement community, city, state, and local. And but as we're sitting down outside with our blue lights lit, I couldn't help but to realize, because they read all the names, the 585 names of officers that have been killed since the city started. Couldn't help but to realize that 4 of them I had worked with. They were my partners.
Sure.
And then I went on to realize that I had another partner that on my days off, he was shot. And it happened 3 times. So it's rough out there. The demands of the profession and everything, but the element, or however you want to refer to them, they have all the weaponry that they wanted. Yeah, I recall, they'd be doing raids, and we'd use a shopping cart to unload the guns from the apartment to our vehicle. One presented itself in the alley, and let's use that, rather than maybe we cut 50 trips. We would just load the shopping cart and take it to the wagon, the transport vehicle.
Sure.
But I used to be with City College as a secondary job for about 20 years, and in fact, I headed up the negotiating team for City College security, and I left them about a year ago, retired. But for 31 months, we were at the negotiating table, and it's hard to penetrate the mindset. And I would show 8x10. So there's 7 city colleges in the city of Chicago. I would show 8x10s of officers' cars shot while they're at work at one campus. I would show, 8x10 of a homicide victim represent. I should say that they name me the colleges. Homicide victim apprehended coming out of the computer labs. He committed the homicide somewhere else, but he was frequenting the city colleges. Another city college, 2 machine guns found on the roof. Kennedy King. Just right across the street from the athletic campus. You cringe with this here stuff. And so many things. I would tell them at the negotiating table. Now, the head of the negotiating table was Rahm Emanuel's relative. But it's hard to penetrate that mindset. I would tell them at the negotiating table, here's a company here. They sell bulletproof ballistic grade backpacks with such features as pull-out panels to cover the ribcage. They sell them in small sizes and in large sizes. Students can buy them and faculty can buy them. It's a sign of the times. Why do they do that? And yet we weren't indemnified. Security, which was a labor force that I represented of 500 some odd people, we weren't indemnified. And additionally, we were expressly prohibited, written in a memorandum, from the use of handcuffs. Yeah, when somebody's up on the 3rd floor, you're summoned to the scene, and they're whatever they're doing, throwing the furniture around or whatever. Well, if you can't use your equipment in handcuffs, what are you to do? In a headlock down the cement stairs? In the elevator? It's craziness. In effect, all you've done was summon another set of eyes and another set of ears. Yeah, he's doing this. Because if I can't lay hands on him, if I can't contain him by virtue of my equipment, and I've used that equipment for 33 years, doesn't change the verbiage at all. Expressly prohibited. And then, I'd bring this out at the negotiating table. I was quite vocal. And I had representatives on to my right and left from each of the 7 city colleges. I would bring out, you retain Federal Bureau of Investigation to give us active shooter courses. You retain them. They don't come to visit. Enforce security and faculty. This is your protocols to follow. Well, equip your security force. But I digress. I don't mean to bend your ear and all that. But that's the mentality of our political leaders. Absolutely. And the signs, you're right. They boggle my mind. No weapons and all that. Well, that's fertile grounds for. Absolutely. When I got married in 1972, my lovely wife, she gives me the green light on so many things. I was a policeman, so I was armed at our wedding. But in the news in Texas, it surfaced that a church was robbed up. So what was robbed? So was I goofy then or whatever? But if you're entitled to the right, your constitutional right. How many countries are like ours? And you got to be responsible to drive a car. That's right. You got to be responsible to bear weapons. Sure, there's responsibilities and training, whatever. But I don't mean to bend your ear.
There is one point, though, I want to make, and I don't say this in the spirit of contradicting you, but people often make the comparison to automobile. You do not have a constitutional right to drive an automobile.
Point well made.
That's a privilege that is bestowed on you by the state, and the state can regulate it in any way they can.
You're right, yes.
You do have a constitutional right to bear a firearm.
Yeah.
And that's something that makes it somewhat different from even driving an automobile.
Sure,
yeah,
sure. You mentioned, I often talk about carrying a firearm compared to wearing your seatbelt. And my wife will sometimes rib me or say, are you taking a gun to church? We're going to go to church. Or we're in our nice neighborhood on the northwest side. Do you need a gun to walk the dog? Well, it's like wearing a seatbelt. You don't know when that accident's going to occur. And I like to be armed. I like to have my firearm in case that does
especially
occur.
when you're privy to some of the horrific things. I don't want to scare nobody or whatever, but there's a reason why the public, this stuff isn't advertised. There's some terrible people out there, and they keep on emptying those facilities. Guess where those people go? So stuff can happen. We've been lucky to today. Tell me about tomorrow.
Sure.
You never know what's in store for you. And you got to have, this is your best weapon here, your mind,
Absolutely.
your brain set and all that. But it doesn't hurt to have other skills,
In the city of Chicago, was it true that the police officers were supposed to carry their weapons off duty? Or was it optional?
Well, I was in Cicero yesterday, John. I told you I went to Mary Queen to have my old parish in Cicero. And as we're driving there, I told my sisters who were coming down, I don't know, maybe we're like 60-some hundred on Cermak. I said, years ago I was involved in a gunfight here. I was off duty. I don't work I was a Chicago policeman. But I was off duty. I knew what I heard was gunshots. The sporting goods store there in on the north side of the street, and 2 ex-convicts were taking their teenage sons and sticking the store up. So they had hostages. And when I finally worked my way up to about 15, 20 feet from the back door, on the other side of the door, they're dragging out the owner, who has been shot in the head. So he had expired. So that's off duty. So do I have to, they've redefined it. They say, as long as you take a police action, you call 911. But you don't know what you're confronted with. My business takes me all over this city.
Right.
North, south, east, and west. So it's not my nature to give a blind eye or to walk away from things. If it warrants my attention, in my older years, I got to let it sink in. I'm not the young guy, whatever. But so
It goes for me too.
Yeah.
Then I tell you what, and everybody's talking about guns. I work, and I think some of you know it. I work for the Illinois Racing Board at the racetracks in the state, and here several months ago now. It's more than several months ago. I had a incident. An owner and a trainer of this mare were having an argument, and the argument turned into a fight, and the trainer in his mind figured, well, I'll show you, and he took a knife out and he stabbed 3 times the owner's horse, and we had to have the horse put down. Now if he'd had a gun, he probably would have shot the horse. But just because they say, well, the gun is a weapon, it's not the only weapon.
It's not.
Not
That's right.
the only weapon.
Well, coming to
And this
that,
guy, I still got him in jail.
UK, they've had, outlawed guns for years, but people have been getting them. So they started taking away, and they started using knives. Now they want
They've
to
got a-
outlaw knives.
They've got a tremendous problem with knife crime
Right.
in Britain now because of the fact that, that guns are virtually unattainable in the United Kingdom. Now criminals are using, and many incidents of crimes being committed with knives.
Sure.
I was stationed over in France, and of course this was 58, 59, and the gendarmes did not carry guns. They didn't carry guns over there, and they should have, because it's a lousy country.
Years ago, I was talking at the Tri-Counties, so 3 counties organization, and they received me very well as a guest speaker. It was on behalf of the Bagpipe Band. And I told you, Mark, earlier, we played for policemen, firemen killed in line of duty. We offered that service for free upon the request of the Bree family. Well, they had another guest speaker there, a Bobby from England. And as I referenced my satin ribbons written in gold, all the slain officers, and there's a lot of them that I reference, he was just so taken by it. He sought me out after my talk, and he couldn't, but is in such belief. Well, different cultures, what can I say? But they don't, well, maybe they don't have the crime, but I think things are changing there,
And we will be back in just a few moments. You're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians, September edition, and we will be back.
We will change the mind.
Do you suffer from pain? Do you know someone that has constant pain of their low back, neck, shoulder, knee, or wrist? Have they tried medications, exercise, physical therapy, or chiropractic, and nothing seemed to make it better? Well, I may have your answer. Why not try a napropath? Hi everybody, this is Dr. Wayne Chickowitz, and I've been practicing 30 years treating pain. I'm board certified and hold a diplomate in pain management. For your convenience, we have 2 locations. In Cicero, 3602 South 61st Avenue, 708-656-7000, or in Villa Park at 122 West St. Charles Road, Suite 1A, 630-833-4007. Why not try a napropath and stop the pain today?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Escachoko. I'm your announcer and moderator today at Meet the Chicago Historians. We're here in the great month of September, the 9th month of the year. This is the month of VJ Day. We marked VJ Day just a few days ago. Next year was going to be a major celebration of VJ Day. It'll be the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, just as this year we had the 75th anniversary of D-Day. A couple of historical notes for Meet the Chicago Historians. Over the weekend, September the 13th and 14th are the anniversary of the drafting of our national anthem. The Star-Spangled Banner was written between the night of the 13th and the morning and the day of September the 14th in the year 1814. While our country was at war for the second time with Great Britain, what we call the War of 1812, Francis Scott Key, a young attorney, was on board a British warship trying to negotiate the release of a friend of his, a doctor, who had been arrested by the British in Maryland, and they had agreed to release the doctor, but said that both the doctor and Key would have to stay on board until the bombardment had been completed. They were bombarding Fort McHenry, which guards the city of Baltimore. So that was the time that Francis Scott Key wrote 4 stanzas of poetry, which were then set to music almost immediately thereafter and are known today as the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. And it's believed that he had the music in mind. The tune was an old tune, sometimes been referred to as a drinking tune, that was called To Anacreon in Heaven. And it was the theme song of a club in England, the Anacreontic Society, which believed primarily in wine, women, and song. They were a party group, you might say. But the music was impressive. It had been used for political reasons. It had been used as the campaign song of John Adams in 1800 when he was running for re-election as president. So it had been used for many other purposes. And he almost certainly had the music in mind. So it did not become officially our national anthem until nearly a century later in 1931. 1931 by act of Congress. But the President of the United States during the First World War, Woodrow Wilson, issued an executive order making it the national anthem for purposes of the Army and the Navy. He had the power as Commander-in-Chief to designate a national anthem for use by the armed forces. And so in 1916, it became the Armed Forces song that would be considered our national anthem. But it's a beloved tune, and the anniversary is right in this time of September. And tomorrow, September the 17th, is Constitution Day. It was on September the 17th that our Constitution was formally adopted and signed by the delegates to the Constitutional Convention in 1787. And that's another date that is not widely known, but should be, because the Constitution, we mentioned it earlier with reference to the right to bear arms, which of course is in the Bill of Rights. It's the foundation of our form of government, the foundation of our country's liberties, and the way in which we exercise our freedoms. And tomorrow, September the 17th, is Constitution Day, the anniversary of the adoption of the document. So this is a month with a lot of history. So we mentioned September the 11th earlier, VJ Day, which is going to be coming up on a major celebration next year. And thought I would begin this segment with a little bit of history about how this month of September is related to the history of our nation.
Right. It's kind of sorry because it seems like history has been less and less of it is being taught. I don't know if they don't.
And what's being taught is often the wrong version.
Well, yeah, it's historical. What do they call it?
Revisionism.
We used to call it civics,
right?
In school and that,
I
but
don't think
there's nothing like that done now.
I was taught it in school.
The way history in the past, kids were taught that this was a great nation, but that it had some flaws, which every human institution has flaws. Today it's the reverse. Today they're being taught that this is a flawed nation, which may have done a few good things along the way, but the emphasis is on the supposed flaws and weaknesses and sins of the United States.
Yeah.
And that's just simply wrong. No other country in the world teaches history that way.
Yeah.
I can assure you that in China, in Russia, and in most of the rest of the world, they don't teach kids that their country is a country that has committed sins and is evil, and that's not the way. They're taught to be proud of the country in which they live.
And that's been fairly.
It was like that here when I was a kid, when my parents were kids, but unfortunately it's not the case anymore.
And that's been pretty recent that's been taking
Just the last, it's really since the 60s, really everything.
Well, actually later than that.
Well, but it started going south, and I was in college during the 60s, and I can remember how already then the condemnation of, because of the war in Vietnam, which was just expanded to a condemnation of everything America had done. We suddenly became the worst nation on earth, and
the kids
it's been that way ever since.
The kids from that era now are running a lot of stuff.
They're the tenured professors in our universities, and the ones that are preaching this.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong, or if there's any validity to part of what I say. Isn't it somewhat an indictment on education? Sure. Isn't it trying to revise history? Yeah. Isn't it a case that they just don't teach them certain aspects of history? Yeah, and keep them uninformed and keep them ignorant and direct them this way or that way. Is there?
Well, history is taught from a political perspective now. I mean, the textbooks are written from the particular perspective of the left, and it's the left's version of American history.
Okay.
And you can look at
revisionist.
Yeah.
You study World War II.
Yeah.
World War II. Their teaching of World War II names like Eisenhower and Patton, they're just footnotes. If they're mentioned at all, it's just briefly.
Or
And
Neville
the-
Chamberlain or what.
But a great deal about the incarceration of the Japanese, because that's terrible. That shows what an awful country America. There's far more attention paid to that sort of thing
Yes.
than there is to the heroism, to the
Yeah.
achievements of our armed forces.
How on earth do you get that proverbial pendulum to swing back? I keep my ear tuned to, now I hope I don't stumble over her name, Betsy DeVos, part of the cabinet, and she's in charge of education. I hope that she's quietly making inroads, because that pendulum does have to swing back.
Right.
What is the makeup of our professors or whatever? 90, 95, 98% tilted in one direction.
Right.
There's got to be some balance there.
That's right.
The ones in the first row, they don't have any idea what we're talking about.
Well,
They're buying it hook, line, and
That's,
sinker.
that's the trouble. Kids
You know.
go to school, they believe what they're taught. It's
Yeah.
in the textbook. It's what the teacher is
That's
telling
right.
them. If
I know
they
it's
have to
easy-
read any outside books, it all follows the same line of thinking.
Yeah. And hence, once they get a little older, they, oh yeah, I see what but boy, to wait that time span can be very damaging, because they've already rendered the votes in the wrong direction.
Sure. I've got to think that the family influence has got a big part of it, too. And I've got
The
three...
lack of it.
Lack of it. I have 3 young children. Well, not young. They're young compared to us, let's put it that way. But they're very proud Americans. One served in the United States Marine Corps and served in Afghanistan. And
Yes.
all of them stand up for the flag. Let's
Well,
put
look
it
at
that
the
way. And
foundation you
well, I
gave
think
them.
that's an important
And
point.
that's the
So it's-
exception.
I wish it weren't, but yeah.
I was talking. Yeah, maybe she was 10 years old, and she would. I said, "You remember Pearl Harbor?" She says, "Yeah, that's when." I don't know how it, but it was turned around, and she says, "Well, yeah." And right after that, the Americans started World War II and dropped the atomic bomb
their
and killed
kids are-
all those Japanese
Right, no.
people.
Kids believe we started the war when we dropped the atomic bomb on
Right.
Japan.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's how totally out of
Right.
it
Sure.
they are.
And
You know,
get
you
20-year-olds
mentioned,
that don't even know what the Vietnam War was.
Right,
Don't even know.
You mentioned the 75th anniversary, John. I listened to this WLS man, Cal Muller or whatever,
He's going to take a tour to
and he's going to take a
Normandy
tour
next
over
year.
there. Yeah, it's pretty heavy money, and he's going to take a tour over there and hit all of these
Patton's
places.
Grave.
Yeah. I just
Bastogne, the
boy, it
Battle of
keeps
the
running
Bulge.
across me. Having been stationed in France and Lebanon, why I would sure.
They've been doing
Sure
that
be
for
a-
a while for World War II veterans, and when they go over to France, they're treated like kings. I mean,
Yeah.
they still
As they
teach.
should be.
They,
Yeah.
they
Right.
still teach history.
Right. I
in
think
France.
the
Yeah.
group of people that got the worst end of the treatment were Vietnam vets, and I don't know if we have any Vietnam
Yeah.
vets
Right.
amongst us, but any veteran that I see, I always thank him or her for their service,
right.
They were-
especially a Vietnam vet, because
They were
got
treated.
a-
They were
they got
They
the
they
raw
told
end.
them that yes,
Yeah.
that they were wrong and that they
Oh,
killed
yeah.
people and
Right.
And
no.
the thing about it, when they discharged them, now they just charge companies at a time.
Right.
There they were doing individuals,
Sure.
and they were pretty much letting know, when you fly home, don't wear your uniform.
Oh, so now they put them all in a company and then disband the company at a time?
Yeah,
Oh,
or
I
a
never
group.
knew that. Yeah, in groups, not
Yeah.
the individual.
Yeah, in Vietnam, they were discharging people
For
individually.
Vietnam. Yeah.
I was in France. I was in 63 to 66, 3 years.
Thank
But
you.
I was 100 miles south of France in the European theater. And, they do hold us, the old-timers, in high regard. We marched through a town, and the mayor... And so this was 20 years after Patton. Which really, in the overall scheme of things, 20 years isn't all that long. But the mayor opened up his cellars to afford us a drink of wine.
Nice.
Right.
In appreciation.
Right.
And that makes you feel good.
Very
for sure.
good,
You're
yeah.
recognized, you know.
I mean,
Absolutely.
every year on D-Day, they will show scenes in Normandy where the school children, every year, they go out and decorate the graves of
Right.
the Americans and the
Right.
British with flags.
Yeah.
And they had, so they're taught. I mean, they're taught how much they owe to America, to Britain, for coming there and liberating them from the Nazis.
I was so
And they
proud.
probably know more about it than our kids.
Than our
do.
kids, right.
Oh, absolutely, they do.
And a lot
They
of
know more
a lot
about
of
it.
people don't realize in Normandy, there's German cemeteries there too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Where my son was born, that was right over there where the
they weren't the
French
same.
and the
but
Germans
right.
had their machine gun and
John was born in France?
oh yeah,
And conceived.
yeah, and conceived is right.
Yeah.
But I forget what I was going to say now.
They got World War One.
I'm thinking of that.
You're thinking of that.
Well, they have gigantic cemeteries from the First World War.
Yeah.
Right.
None, were German and
Right.
French
We
and
paid a
British.
very dear price.
My uncle would be my uncle was a fireman for one day in the city of Chicago Fire Department,
Wow.
and the next day out of that he was in the Army.
Wow.
This was First World War,
Right.
and he was over there. He was a corporal, I think. He was a corporal, and Bill was killed 11 hours after the time the war was over.
Right.
Right after they signed that,
You know,
it hadn't gotten out to the field where these guys were at.
Sure.
and there's
And he
people.
came back here, and he's buried at Rose Hill Cemetery.
There's
And at that time, because that's a long time, the people aren't around there anymore, they said that it was the biggest burial that they ever had there. It was just, they were well known in that
Right.
area
Wow.
of
in,
Rose Hill.
in
And
Europe, there's still people dying from the First World War because there's so much ordnance
Oh
laying
yeah,
around.
yeah. They
And it's
Well,
people are
some
still
every
out
so
digging
often,
in their backyard
yeah.
and they hit a mine or a shell. Yeah,
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
well, that's, it's the way it goes.
That's right.
You know, what are you
So
going to
we-
do when they should go around? If you buy a place, go around with a
Yeah,
mine
mine
detector.
detector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they do. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there was so
So
much
much-
artillery in the First World War.
Sure,
So
yeah.
many millions of shells that were
And it's
fired.
been there so long it gets buried.
Yeah.
People think of World War One in terms of machine guns. The movies they get most of the casualties in the First World War came from artillery. Most of the men on both sides that died were killed by artillery
Right.
because it was just constant bombardment
Right.
of shells in those trenches.
It's very very interesting to go around there and visit all of these different places. There's a place called Oradour,
Oh yeah.
Oradour-sur-Glane, and it's a town of Oradour in France. And the Nazis went in and shut the town down because they were being shot at by people from that town. The ones that they went out like on their own guards and that. So the Nazis went in there and they shut that town down. They killed most of the people in town. Had them all go into the church.
Right.
Church is still there. Windows are still there, broken out, busted up. You can go in, you can see the machine gun, the walls and that from the
Right.
fire. And then they burned them. They burned it down.
Right.
Those people are all buried in a mass grave.
Right.
There's no identifying most of them. And as you go in and as you go out, there's a sign it's in French and in German. I can't right now. I've got a paper from their paper, and what it says is, if you were a German soldier, you better not tell us because we're going to kill you.
Right.
In other words,
Right.
something like that. And I tell you what, it really makes you think about what they did.
Right.
They just completely annihilated that whole town.
Right.
They did the same thing in Czechoslovakia,
Yeah.
a town called Lidice, where Reinhard Heydrich, who was the second man in the SS to Heinrich Himmler, he was virtually the second in command, and he was assassinated by the Czech partisans. He was driving in his open automobile, and I believe with explosives. They blew up his car, and the nearest town was Lidice. I don't know that there's any indication that anyone from Lidice had anything to do with the assassination, but it just happened to be the nearest town to where he was killed. So they did the same thing. They went in and massacred everyone in that town, men, women, children. They maybe even killed the dogs and the animals for all I know. They exterminated everyone in the town as a reprisal.
There's a program called National Geographic, and they've got a lot of stuff during World War II, and they were taking verbal histories, and they were talking to a couple guys from, the Second World War, and he says, "Did you take a lot of prisoners?" He says, "Not really." He says, "The Wehrmacht, they were fine. They got drafted just like we did. But if we found out somebody was SS or Gestapo, they were gone."
Yeah.
So today's times, Trump but I mean others too, Reagan and all that. Be strong, but verify. And if you're strong enough, and hopefully you never have to get into war.
Right, that's right.
And don't tolerate any of this nonsense from these other countries. Iran and others. You got to deal with them. But hopefully, if you're strong enough, you never have to get into a war.
And I think I was very kind of upset about this guy that Trump just let go, Dalton.
Yeah.
He was that kind of a guy.
Oh.
All the
Mike
time.
Bolton.
Yeah.
Very tough.
Bolton, Mike Bolton.
Secretary of State or something like that?
No, Dalton.
Dalton.
No, it's a B. It's a B. Bolton.
Bolton. Yeah.
Bolton. Okay.
Yeah.
And they were afraid that he was going to start a war or something like that. Well,
But from what I understand, if you agree with Trump, you're doing fine. If you don't disagree, you're out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that he's the first president that operated.
Well,
that
yeah,
way.
right.
I would suggest that we've had other presidents who didn't tolerate
The
anyone.
same thing. Yeah.
But it was never looked on like
Harry
like it is now.
Truman fired Douglas MacArthur.
That's right.
Wow.
One of the greatest heroes the nation ever produced.
That's right.
Because he disagreed with him. So.
That's right.
I think
happened
that's
before.
a good analogy, what you just said about a military and being strong. I think it kind of carries over to the civilian world by being strong and having a firearm will prevent a lot of things, just like other wars amongst the
The
U.S.
more
same
good
way.
guys who are armed, the better.
That's right. I
Right.
believe that.
I've always thought, this is just a personal thought of mine, I've
sure.
always thought that military officers should be permitted to carry sidearms in the United States. I mean, they're trained. If you're an officer, you're trained in the use of a handgun.
Sure.
That's right.
I don't see any reason why military officers shouldn't be authorized.
John, you mean in retirement also, or?
Well, perhaps in retirement. I mean, but
Oh.
when you're on duty as a soldier, sailor, whatever, because in the environment today with terrorism, you're wearing a uniform. That's a target.
That's
For
right.
some people, that's a target.
Sure.
And I don't see any reason why, and not just the officers. If you're an enlisted man and you're trained in the use of a
That's right.
handgun,
Yeah.
I would see no. I would wish they would make a federal law authorizing military personnel to carry a sidearm on duty.
How many states have
More
open
good
carry?
guys, the better.
Well, I don't know the exact count, Bill, but there's a significant number of states that have what's called constitutional carry,
Okay.
which means you don't need a permit to carry concealed or open. I do know that nearby states like Wisconsin, Indiana, they have open carry rights. One of the things that we talk about in our class is that open carry probably isn't a real good idea, especially for civilians. Somebody sees that you have a gun, especially in an urban area.
Take it off of you.
Now you're a target. And they're going to follow you into the alley with a baseball bat, and now they have a gun. That's
Yeah.
my theory. And
Yeah.
I think open carry is probably not the wisest thing. Maybe if you're in a Plano, Texas, or a place where everyone's got open carry, that might
Right.
be a different scenario. But
Right.
I think it's better to be concealed, in my opinion.
Right.
But the number of states, they're growing. There's more and more states that become what is called constitutional carry. And I believe Georgia was the next one, and they were considering to get that status. Basically
okay,
what it means that you don't need a permit to carry either open
Right.
or.
Now, it's been in the news.
And to a
it's just-
certain extent, both military and civil a lot of people, the only thing they understand is force.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you don't have it, they're
is
going to
the
use it
common
against
denominator.
you.
They will use it against
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
It was in the news this week that Walmart and some other retailers were suggesting that they don't want you to carry a fire, but they don't have the right to abridge your
second-
unless the state provides that type of business is.
Well, like I said, 23 restricted areas, but they do have the right to post no gun signage if they wanted
Yeah.
to,
Right.
regardless if they're part of that 23.
I
or
heard
not.
it said, now I don't know how accurate this is, but I heard it said that the symbolism of that automatic with the line through it, that's a Beretta 226.
I've
So,
heard that too. That's
you
the
know,
only gun.
well, I
you
don't
need
have a
to
Beretta
restrict.
226, so I'm going. I don't
James
know.
Bond wouldn't be able to carry his Beretta
Right.
into the yeah.
But John, I think I think
Besides, they're
that was
heavy as hell.
specific. That was specific to open carry. If I'm if I'm correct.
I think it was open carry.
open
I
carry is
think
what
you're
they
right. It was
didn't.
open
They did
carry.
not want open carry.
So there are 23 types of places.
Restricted
in-
areas such as schools, courts, municipal buildings, Cook County Forest Preserves.
Now
and
here's
so
the
on.
problem I've always wanted to ask.
Yeah.
If you have the right to carry, you have your concealed carry permit.
Yes.
But there are so many places you cannot go into. This causes, I mean, if you're downtown and you're carrying a concealed weapon,
What are
and
you
you
gonna
suddenly
do with
realize
it?
you have to go to the bank to make a withdrawal. You can't go
Banks
in.
are usually pretty
you can't,
good.
You can't
Yeah,
leave
right.
the gun on the doorstep as you
no.
go in. you know.
And I mean that's a point, and people see the 23 restricted areas and they get turned off. I like to express my typical day and where I go and how I don't necessarily have to put my gun elsewhere. You go into a Menards, you go into Costco, for instance. Stores like that, those are stores that I frequent, and
There's
and
no-
the bank inclusive. Banks, there's no restriction unless that specific bank.
Banks.
Banks are not. They're,
Oh,
they're
I thought banks were.
no,
I
they're,
thought banks
they
were-
are not a
Even
restricted
police
area.
stations here have
Yeah, police
the
stations
sign.
are restricted because
Public
they fall
buildings,
under
yeah,
municipal
yeah.
Right.
facilities.
But you know, they have these lock boxes. They're pretty sturdy and all that. Whether
Yeah.
it be back by your spare tire or under your seat. And
Sure.
they have
Oh,
them with,
yeah.
with
Oh,
cables
okay.
attached. So
If,
if you
yeah,
can,
if you have your car, but I mean, let's say you'd go downtown
Oh,
on
yeah.
the train.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
I
then
don't
you're-
even know if you can carry
You
it on the
can't.
train.
You
Can't.
can't. No,
So,
you
you know.
can't take it on the train. Any public transportation or building affiliated with public transportation, it's restricted.
So it really makes it difficult to exercise that right.
It does, and you know I understand some of them, and like I say, police are even restricted to some of them, like courtrooms and so forth. And I get it. There's some that are very disturbing to me because there's one in particular that is Forest Preserve, Cook County Forest Preserve only. Any other forest preserve in the state you can carry, but not Cook County, probably the most dangerous forest preserves
There
in,
is,
in,
right.
in the country, but not allowed to carry. And again, the only ones that abide to that law are the law-abiding
Yeah.
people. The
Yeah.
criminals don't care at all.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself having to walk back maybe, well, let's just say several blocks to put my gun in the car because I get to a point where it says no gun, and,
Right.
and I abide to it.
Yeah.
I'm
It's like
law-abiding.
locks.
And
They're
I-
only for honest people.
I would
Exactly.
assume that's not the case in many states throughout the union. I assume that is that's in Illinois. That
There are
they
definitely
were so resentful at being forced
Of
to
course.
grant that they go, we're going to abridge this in as many ways as we
Right,
can to make
and-
this as uncomfortable as we possibly
Sure, and that
can.
was specific to Cook County Forest
Yeah.
Preserve, so that was a very, like I say, a specific law. But no, there are many states that are pretty lenient. We talk about differences throughout the nation regarding an airport and carry. In Illinois, you cannot carry on airport grounds at all. Many parts of the nation you can carry on the airport as long as you don't go past TSA with your loaded firearm. So that
Can you go by with an unloaded firearm?
you can have an unloaded firearm in your carry-on bag if you're going to transport it, and
Right.
make the declaration that you have that firearm when you check the bag,
I
but
heard
not carry-on bag.
That
It has to
TSA will let you carry a 2-inch knife on the plane now.
that I don't know. Yeah, that I don't know.
Also, you're to keep the ammunition in
No, I'm
another
talking about a
container.
knife.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
2-inch
talking about a
blade.
gun.
right.
Like
Yeah,
a 2-inch
yeah.
can't. Well, that's what the terrorists used in 9/11 too.
Yeah,
They used
right.
a box cutter.
Box
Sure,
cutters, yeah.
sure.
Heck of a lot of things can be undermined and all that, but you know, when you blanketly take the rights away from the good people, there is no perfect remedy, you know. And the bad guys they're not going to listen
They
to
don't
none of
let-
this
yeah,
Not at
stuff.
all.
They don't
None
care.
of this stuff.
Not at all.
I flew to after 9/11. I was flying back and forth to New York. When I was president of the union, to all of the different memorials and wakes and funerals and that. And I got the idea one day, the hell with O'Hare or Midway. I'm going to drive up to Milwaukee. I can't think of the name of the place now, and I should.
Milwaukee.
But anyway, I the first time I was up there, empty out your pockets, put it in here. And on my key ring, I have my handcuff key. They confiscated the whole key ring.
That would be Mitchell Airport.
Mitchell Field, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they confiscated the whole thing. They wouldn't let me. I had to go, and they have a setup there where you can put it in and pay for it, and they'll mail it back. And it was, it was waiting for me in the mail when I got back home.
Well.
But even that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't have the cuffs with me, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. I got I still got it. I went into the State of Illinois building, and you have to go up through the thing. And I had this, and I didn't realize. So I said, "Do I have to do it?" He says, "Yeah, put it in a bag and put your name and address on it, and we'll mail it to you." They never mailed it back to me.
Jeez.
And with that, we'll take our final break. We're coming up on our fifth and final segment of the September edition of Meet the Chicago Historians here at the John DeVita Broadcast Center, and we'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you looking for a place to have some printing done? Well, I have the right place for you to go, and that is the printing store in Oak Park, Illinois. Call or see Phil Berry at 621 Madison Street, or call 708-383-3638. Phil Berry will sit down with you and help you plan whatever you need printed. Now, his products are brochures, booklets, business cards, catalogs, envelopes, letterheads, flyers, invitations, newsletters, notepads, menus, mailers, manuals, labels, posters, postcards, price list, NCR forms, sale sheets, table tents, pocket folders, and presentation forms. And he also has 1 to 4 color offset printing, digital copying, high-speed copying, graphic designs, typesetting, laminating, foil stamping, die cutting, and imprinting. And his complete bindery service includes booklets, cutting, scoring, folding, numbering, padding, and drilling. So once again, for all your printing needs, call or see Phil Berry at the printing store at 621 Madison Street in Oak Park, Illinois, or call 708-383-3638. They are located at Madison Street and Clarence, just east of Oak Park Avenue. And that's at 621 Madison Street in Oak Park, Illinois, or give Phil Berry a call at 708-383-3638.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Welcome back to our final segment of our September 2019 edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. Let's give our folks an opportunity to introduce themselves one final time. We'll go around the table.
Good afternoon. It's Mark Nielsen, retired Chicago Fire Department, and now owner-operator of Nielsen Defense Concealed Carry Training.
And I'm Dennis Fitzgerald, retired Chicago policeman, and I currently head up the Knights of Columbus Police Council. That's the only police council in the Knights of Columbus, and we're here in Chicago. So that's Knights12173.us.
Bill Kugelman, with all of that time on the Chicago Fire Department, I also got the St. Florian Council of the Knights of Columbus and was the Grand Knight there. And you must remember that St. Florian's number is 12911. 12911. And it's the only fire council in the whole rigmarole of Knights of Columbus.
And I'm John S. Kacholko, and I was the advocate for the Cardinal Council of the Knights of Columbus, which was based at one time at Mary Queen of Heaven and at other places throughout Cicero.
Yeah.
Cardinal Council. It was founded in 1913, and I was involved with two good friends of mine who have both since passed away when we had our 75th anniversary of the Cardinal Council in 1988. We had a very elaborate Jubilee ceremony at that time.
Wow.
So we've got some celebrated Kiwanis, or not Kiwanis, Knights of Columbus. I was in a Kiwanis club as well,
Yeah.
but celebrated members of the Knights of Columbus here with us today.
John, if I could tell you, last month in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in August, I was recognized on the international stage with the Knights of Columbus. So out of their 17,500 councils, coming from 14 different countries, I was really humbled. My wife and I were on stage to receive award distinguishing as the Grand Knight and the top recruiter. So it's quite an organization.
They
It is a
also
great
they
organization.
also presented Dennis's wife with her halo.
I didn't know you knew that, Bill. But she's deserving.
And I was also, you were probably 4th degree with the cape and chapeau, and I have my saber. That's not a saber, but it's a sword.
Yes.
And the admiral's hat, which they are now doing away with that.
And they have a whole new.
Boy, is that a hard sell.
And that I think is a terrible idea. Just
Yes,
absolutely
yeah.
that blazers, and it
Yeah.
looks.
I was 4th degree in 1979. I fast-tracked it, and
about the time
what
I-
a distinguishing uniform. The cape,
Yeah.
chapeau, and
Cape
saber
and
with the
chapeau.
ostrich plumage and all that.
Yeah.
Well, they give you a baseball
But now, not that I understand it, but they have evolved to a beret and a suit coat or whatever. But I'll tell you, there had to be several hundred of them at the international conference. This was a sight to behold, John. The front dais, there's 70 feet on each side of the podium. That's 140 feet. And there were 3 rows of 140 feet. And this was filled by bishops and cardinals from around the world. In front of them was a football field of participants. We all had to have white tuxedos, so now it's part of my wardrobe. But literally a football field. And I was very honored to be able to talk to the Supreme Knight. He's still in office. He sanctioned our council in March of 1998, Carl Anderson. And I had a state official tell me that he's the second most holiest person, second only to the Pope. I don't know enough to challenge that.
You may have a number of cardinals that might want to challenge that
Yes.
suggestion.
Wow. Well, okay. All right. You're right. Well, maybe he talked about our organization-wise or something like that. But the Knights of Columbus is approximately 2 million people with 14, like I say, all those 17,500 councils. And I extended an invitation. As he sanctioned our charter in 1998, I extended an invitation to him to be there on our 22nd anniversary in March of 2020. And I told him that all weekends are open. Well, he and his wife absorbed that invitation. And the next day, as we were rehearsing for awards, and I'm up on stage shaking his hand, he brings the subject up again. He says, you know what we were talking about yesterday? We're going to try to make that happen. Wow. So we're elated because should that come to pass, we'll be pulling from Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and throughout the state of Illinois. So it's an exciting time for our council. You know, I should say that we do things in leaps and bounds. We're not inhibited. We don't slow poke it or anything. And it's showing. As I said earlier, you know, people that are joining our council and all that. So I just want to let you know.
Very good, very good.
John, Dennis, I told you about Anderson when they came here in
Oh, yes.
98. And I don't think I told
Listen to this.
Mark. but we had a dual ceremony, St. Florian and St. Michael, police and fire, and they were coming in, going to be a big deal at Holy Family, and I found out when they were coming in. Of course, they had told me. I was setting things up, and we went out to O'Hare. They were flying in, and I got a hold of, I think it might have been Sampy. Somebody else before Sampy.
Sampy's been around a long time.
Yeah, no, well,
Family.
this is Tim. Two different. You got Bob and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I called the firehouse, told them what flight it was, what airlines, and to come on over and give them a water salute.
So the water cannons that the plane went through. Is that how it went?
Yeah, that's how they do it. And so they did. They held up the plane out there for the rigs to go over. They gave them the salute. They came in, and Anderson was just, most of them were all, they just couldn't figure out what the hell this was about. And they were so happy in that.
Right.
Well,
Thought they were in a car wash.
as I was as I was standing there, here comes the pilot, and he said they just pointed you out to me. He says, I've been looking for somebody that did this, and I said, well, it was me. We do that for the. I said, why? He says, well, it scared me. He was the pilot. He said, they do that on the pilot's last day when he's retiring.
He thought he was getting
He didn't
fired.
notice something.
He says, I was waiting for somebody to come up to me and hand me papers.
Watch.
But I tell you what, it was the talk of the day with everybody coming in on that what
1998.
Chicago Florians did.
And then the Chicago police done their part, escorting him around town.
Oh, yeah.
And it's my understanding he participated in Chicago St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Yeah.
Well, I have that in the back of my mind, too, for 2020.
There you go.
And so we'll see how this develops, and more news to follow in future
Good.
broadcasts.
Yeah,
I'll
very
keep
good,
you posted.
very good. Folks, every year, it's part of my contract with the broadcast center here that I like to call attention sometime during the baseball season to this story. And nothing is more a part of American history than the great game of baseball, our national pastime. In 1858, the first song ever to be composed about baseball was written, and it was called the Baseball Polka. And if you haven't heard of it, it's not surprising because it really went nowhere. But 50 years later, in 1908, a man named Jack Norworth was riding on the subway in the island of Manhattan, and he was a songwriter. And he saw a sign at one of the stops, Baseball Today, Polo Grounds. Now, if you know old-time baseball, you know that in those days there were three teams in New York. There were the New York Yankees, who played in the Bronx. They were the Bronx Bombers. There were, of course, the Brooklyn Dodgers that played in Brooklyn, which had only joined New York City in 1898. It had been a separate city until 1898. And the Giants played at the Polo Grounds on the island of Manhattan. So he sees this sign, and he pulls some paper out of his pocket and starts scribbling down the words to a song. And he finished it. He had a friend who did music, a man named Albert von Tilzer, and he set it to music. Well, we know it as a song that we sing at every baseball game today. It is sung during the seventh inning stretch. The interesting story is that Jack Norworth had never been to a ball game in his life. He wasn't a baseball fan. Neither had Von Tilzer, the fellow who wrote the music. It wasn't until 1940 that he attended his first baseball game, and the Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers, played our Chicago Cubbies, and the Dodgers won at that game 5-4. And Major League Baseball gave him a gold pass so that he could attend any baseball game of his choice.
Wow.
Because he wrote this song that we all know and love. I sometimes refer to it as our fourth or fifth or sixth national anthem, after the Star-Spangled Banner and God Bless America and America the Beautiful and Columbia the Gem of the Ocean. But it has an intro that most people have never heard. in those days, songs had an introduction before you got to the actual lyrics of the song. I heard it once in a movie that Gene Kelly and Frank Sinatra made in 1949 called Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And in it, they sang the whole song. So what I'd like to do is sing the introduction, and then I would hope all my panelists will get in when we come to the main part of the song. But it starts out, it tells the story of why this person wants to be taken to the ball game. And it goes, Nellie Kelly loved baseball games, knew the players, knew all their names. You could see her there every day, shout hooray when they'd play. Her boyfriend by the name of Joe said, to Coney Isle, dear, let's go. Then Nellie started to fret and pout, and that's when I heard her shout, oh, take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the Cubbies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Yay!
Everybody.
More.
Harry Carey was the first person to actually sing that as an announcer. And Bill Veeck, he would sing it in the booth without the microphone. He would just sing it to himself. So Bill Veeck hooked up the mic so that they would play it without him knowing it. And that was how the fans would start joining in and singing. And Veeck told Carey, he says, you know, Harry, if you had a good voice, everybody would be intimidated. No one would want to sing and drown you out. But he says, your voice is so bad that nobody's going to feel inhibited. They're all going to sing along with you. But that's the story. The story is a girl who doesn't want to go to Coney Island with her boyfriend. She wants to go to the ballpark, and that's why she's saying, take me out to the ball game. So I love the song. It's a great American song, and baseball's the national pastime, and we're still in the baseball season. It hasn't come to an end. My tribute to Jack Norworth and Albert Von Tilzer.
We should have more scores that they had yesterday too. More scores, 16-6.
Billy Sunday, was he pitcher with the Cubs?
Billy Sunday was the Billy Graham of his day.
Yeah, but he was a pitcher for a baseball team.
That may be. I don't know.
In his contract, he didn't have to pitch on Sunday.
I think someone's leading you down the path with that. All I know about
They've been doing it for a while.
Billy Sunday was a revivalist. He was a preacher like
born
Billy
again
Graham,
Christian, yeah.
But he was 100 years before Billy Graham.
Right.
And that's why the song that the town that Billy Sunday could not shut down.
Right.
Chicago. So that's my tribute to the great game of baseball. We've got a few minutes left to go. You know, we wound up last month's edition at the end talking about Labor Day. And I know Tom McKenna was talking about Labor Day. We're still in the month of Labor Day. Is there anyone that has any subsequent stories about Labor Day for this month? I always like to say that until a few years ago, Labor Day meant Jerry Lewis and the Labor Day Telethon.
Right, yeah.
That's the only thing that was distinctive about Labor Day was that Jerry Lewis had his all-night and most of the day telethon.
Nothing anymore, though.
And Jerry, of course, he's passed away, and they took it away from him a few years before he died.
Yeah.
And I never understood what happened there, but just all of a sudden one year, Jerry Lewis was not going to host the telethon anymore. And he must have raised hundreds of millions of dollars from muscular dystrophy over the years. But that was the main thing that Labor Day represented was Jerry Lewis and the MDA.
We, the Chicago Fire Department, and the union, participated in answering the phones and you know, whatever they wanted us to do.
And you knew that man that I always called the airline. Was it Bob Sampson?
Bob Sampson.
Bob Sampson.
You actually knew him.
I grew up with Bob.
He was a fire fan of Engine 78?
102.
Well,
his kid is on 78.
His kid is on John.
His kid John.
I heard that he kept yelping, and Kenny Little was saying he was kind of a pain in the butt. and he was in a wheelchair.
Bob Sampson was in the
yeah,
wheelchair.
yeah.
My dad was.
He was kind of. So
my
they
dad
picked
was
him
a
up and
fire-
put him on the second floor, the landing, and they left him there for a while. And after that, they never had any problem.
No,
You know, that came
I
from
don't
Kenny
think that's
Little, so
true.
I think it was pretty
I
close.
think you've been led down the path a few
Well,
times.
he did it.
I think you've heard some.
He
Bob,
did it.
Bob Sampson was one of
He-
the best fire fans that ever was. My dad drove truck 25,
Right.
and my dad, we were very close.
He was
My dad would pick up Bob and put him in the seat
he
and
was
take
the
him on rides. And
CEO of
he
United?
was great.
He was an executive with United Airlines.
He was
I thought he was the CTO.
no, he was
wasn't CEO,
was-
no.
no, he was a vice president.
Okay, close enough.
And he worked for my cousin's husband, who was a vice president of properties and so forth. And he had Bob as his legal guy, whatever they call him, legal assistant and that. And towards the end there, when he got getting bad, they had already bought all his property, so they really didn't have a hell of a lot more to do. He started doing this courier stuff, and they put him up in Hawaii and that.
Right.
And I spoke at his funeral because like I say, I grew up with him, and Bob was good guy, just a nice guy.
Captain of Flying Squad 7, wasn't he?
Jimmy, that was Jimmy.
That was Jimmy.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that was Jimmy. And John is he's still on 78, I guess. It's always
is, yeah. He's
it's always
got
when
all
I
this
call
year,
him,
I think.
it's
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go, and he wanted to go down on the boats or somewhere for a while. And, yeah.
No, stay there. He was there his whole career.
Wasn't
Kevin-
Steve Little a captain there?
Steve was a fireman there. I don't know about captain.
He was.
I don't
He
know.
was a captain there.
Okay.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about Ken Little today. We have his portrait, I might say, photograph here. Ken was a great guy. If your listeners, you will remember him as one of the stalwarts of this program. He was a Chicago historian. He taught classes in Chicago history. I know Rich Lang, our regular announcer, has often said he attended classes that were taught by Ken Little. He was just a nice guy. Just before he died, he put me onto something I had never heard about, the great catastrophe in Chicago in 1950, I believe, when the one of the streetcars collided on the south side
With the gas
and
truck.
incinerated. It was a horrible disaster. And I had never heard of this. People know about the Chicago fire. They know about the St. Valentine's Day massacre. I had never heard the story.
78th and Halsted or something like that?
No.
Something tells me 63rd.
Oh,
Yeah, that
close
sounds
enough,
more
yeah.
like it was on the
Yeah.
south side. It was I read. He had a book, and I read the book. It was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Right.
He loaned me the book, and it was fun. It was a very, very engrossing story. But anyway, he put me onto this. I was unaware of it. He was a great guy, and we miss Ken Little very much. He
That's
was
right.
He was
But if
a
you ever
terrific
wanted
guy.
to talk to him, you had to be pretty good to get a word in edgewise.
I tell you what, when
Yeah, and
when
that's
he
true of many
died,
people.
when he died, we dedicated this program to him for life.
Yeah.
This would be dedicated to Ken Little
Right.
because
Yeah.
he was the historian.
Yeah.
You
Great. guy.
mentioned 63rd Street. I know, of course, you guys have a lot of busy houses in the fire department, but I remember I was working L platform 1, 2 in the morning, and 63rd in Dorchester, King Drive comes to mind.
I was a
And I'm up
captain
on
there.
the L platform, working my day off, and the trucks come in the one door and out the back. It was just like a cycle. Well, back then it was a busy part of town, and the house, the doors were always in motion.
I was actually the captain of that house. in
Were ya?
63.
Yeah. Where was it? Was it Dorchester or
Yep.
King Drive?
Yeah, they're no longer there, but
Yeah.
1405 62nd Place, east on 62nd Place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Busy house.
Yeah.
I was
Oh, yeah.
just staring
Yeah.
at it, Yeah. But
Very good. In fact, when I first became the captain of that house, I went right to Ken because I wanted to build like a monument and have some different pictures of the history of the house, and he provided me with a lot of info and photos.
Right
to
now,
help me out.
his son Phil, who is the president of the Fire Museum, is they are still, after all of this time, a year or whatever it's been, over a year, cleaning out his house
Wow. Oh yeah.
of all
Yeah,
the
no.
stuff that's
Yeah,
there.
I couldn't
it's,
imagine.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, the other stuff he collected was Tootsie Toys. You know, these little trucks.
Yeah.
He
Oh, I
had
didn't know that.
Yeah.
cases of them.
Well, John, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
So our council, the Police Council of St. Michael the Archangel, patron saint of police, we're going to be celebrating our patron's namesake on September 29th. And we'll do this at St. Michael's Parish, 1633 North Cleveland. But then, of course, after that, I think we're going to mosey on over to Rose Hill Cemetery, 29th of September, 5800 Northwestern. And what was that time slot on that?
10 o'clock.
Starts at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, yeah. So we'll be looking forward to doing that. And anybody in the bounds of my voice who want to, from council members, we're going to be, we'll have our shirts on, our council shirts.
Go over to the firehouse afterwards and have lunch.
That firehouse for
Right.
refreshments.
Speaking
Right.
of Ken Little,
6030 North Clark.
Yes.
And if
Engine
anyone
Company
could
7.
could phone in, we're trying to determine who that famous broadcaster is that provides the PA system for the ceremony at Rose Hill. If you know the answer to that question, there'll be a big prize for you because we're not sure. We know he's a famous local broadcaster, and he provides all of the public address equipment every year over there. He's recognized at the ceremony. And but he's like the Lone Ranger, you know, and he leaves, he's gone, and it's, who was that masked
Well,
man,
listen,
you know, and I
listen.
wanted to thank him.
Can't we, instead of some kind of price, like, can't we get a raise for what we, what we get here?
will give us double our
We're talking
money.
about
Double our pay.
We're talking about doubling it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, that'd be
Doubling
good.
But if you know the answer to this question, maybe next month you can let us know.
I tell you, there's
who
no
that famous broadcaster is.
there's no problem about getting a raise next week. Every seat will have a Sun Times on it,
All right.
so they'll give you a raise.
Or Daily News.
Chicago Daily News.
Uh,
there's a name from the
Yeah,
You were talking about St. Michael's. That was Kenny's home church.
yeah.
That's a beautiful
Because,
church.
you know, he's got Squad 10. And
Yeah.
that was his.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
tell you,
where
that
it
church, on the inside at least, the outside doesn't capture your attention. I don't think it does. But that inside, you can stare at that altar for an hour and appreciate that craftsmanship, and the detail. And you say, how do they do that? Or the side altars. They have the, no, it's not the podium, but the speaking. It comes up in the air and then out into the pews, whatever it's called.
that was the way that was traditional in churches.
Oh, sure.
That you would have that
Yeah.
out, and the priest would
Yes.
go up the steps, and he would be speaking up.
And what would you say? That was from the 20s or
Oh,
something?
that goes back to
Goes
Europe. Oh,
back
that
a
goes
ways.
back
Back-
centuries
I think it
into
goes back
Europe.
to Europe.
Cathedrals in
Yeah.
Europe. and
It's a
churches.
beautiful church, St. Michael, 1633 North Cleveland.
Right.
Get there early for
Pulpit,
parking.
The pulpit.
What's
That
the
was called
pulpit? Thank you
The
very
pulpit.
much.
What's the status of Holy Family now? Is it going to be around?
I
Or?
don't know. They say now that they found not rust,
Mold?
mold in the church. So they really don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah,
And we don't have anybody that really is interested in helping them.
Wow.
You know, gentlemen, I'm just going to let you know, Holy Family Church and Our Lady of Pompeii, at one time, many, many, many years ago, was supposed to be demolished. And Joe Gentile, God rest his poor soul, he came up with the money to save Our Lady of Pompeii
Wow.
and our Holy Family Church. Both churches, he raised the money, got the money, and saved that from the wrecking ball. And also next door to our Holy Family Church is the Joe Gentile St. Ignatius School. And Joe Gentile built the gymnasium there at St. Ignatius, as well as the Joe Gentile Sports Center up at Loyola University up on Devon and Sheridan up north. So Holy Family Church was spared by Joe and Our Lady of Pompeii.
Our Lady of Pompeii, I know that is where they have Mass every year prior to the Columbus Day Parade, the Knights of Columbus. They have a Mass of all the participants at Our Lady of Pompeii Church in Chicago.
They also have, and that's coming up in October, at Our Lady of Pompeii, a mass, a get together for parents that have lost children, and I go every year. for that, and it's quite a session that they have there. It's really nice. Yeah, my guy I grew up with, went to grade school with, and the neighborhood was George Lane. Father George Lane is a Jesuit, and George is the one that really saved Our Lady of the Angels. The Jesuits owned it, and George was always, looking for money in that. I had a brother-in-law that was very, very rich, and he gave a lot of money for that place. But a little story about George and Holy Family. He gave me a call one day, and he said, "Bill," he says, we had a fire there, and fire didn't vent itself; it just vented up into the church, and everything was full of soot and dirty and that, and so they were cleaning all of this up. He says, we've got the crucifix here, and we've got to get it down so that we can clean it and clean behind it and so forth. Is there any way you can help us getting some firemen over in that? So I called 18, and they went over and helped them get this down. If you go there and look, it's on the right-hand side, close to the altar, and not near the altar, but up in that area. You can't miss it. And so they did it, and then George and I used to meet for lunch once in a while. He was in charge of that. What the heck do they call it? Where they have all the books and the different things. It's a business where they printed the books and stuff for the whole archdiocese. Whatever, it was over on Ashland. But anyway, we go out to lunch, and we started talking about stuff, and he started laughing when we were talking about this. And I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "Bill," he says, "I wish I'd have had a camera." He says, "Maybe I shouldn't have." But he says, when those firemen came over, they threw a ladder up, and they put ropes on, and they had some other stuff, and they got the statue down, and what they did was put the rope around Christ's neck and put him down. He says, "I just happened to be walking into the back," he says, "and I saw this," and he says, "Oh my God, am I glad the Cardinal isn't here to see this."
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of another broadcast excursion for the month of September. I want to thank the panelists. This has been our September edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. We're part of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and the executive producer is John Secanda. We're here at the John DeVita Broadcast Center at this undisclosed and highly fortified location. We'll be back next month on the 21st of October. Have a great few days of summer. Enjoy the coming autumn. Happy Columbus Day. Columbus Day will have come and gone by the time we're here again. This is John Escachoco saying thank you for joining us on Meet the Chicago Historians.
You have been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, September the 16th, the year 2019. This broadcast was produced and directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to John Secanda, the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. This program was recorded on Monday, September the 16th, the year 2019. Until next time, friends, please be safe, and thanks for listening.